I was trained in the UK. I did shows such as Lion King, I did Stomp, I did Dirty Dancing, Porgy and Bess, in Europe, in Denmark, Brussels. I was traveling a lot, and I remember feeling, I want more Jamaicans in the space. You know, I remember feeling very alone as a woman, as a black woman, as a Jamaican. So being here today and being a part of this movement and this connecting the creative dots just means so much to me. So I'm super excited to be your host this morning. Just my little excitement there, you know. So just want to let you guys know. The KNOC is an activity of the European Union, that's the EU, funded project, the cultural relations platform of the Service of Foreign Policy Instruments of the European Commission, Brussels, Belgium, a project that directly supports international cultural relations and cooperation between European and global cultural and creative sectors. Now, the KNOC activity is gathering, elaborating, and disseminating research on creatives' presence in Kingston, Jamaica, and their added value. Now, your presence today is an indication of the importance you place on the development of the Jamaican and, by extension, Caribbean cultural and creative ecosystem. Now, in this cultural ecosystem, particularly in the KNOC focal area, that's city, Kingston, recording and dance studio, some formal and some that make do music video locations, fashions, street niche, conservatoires, orchestras, and choral movements coexist with dance hall ecosystems. Now, in this city, there are innovative 21st century digital shared spaces and creatives with no space. It is a complex, integrated cultural and creative ecosystem where multi-talented creative workers multitask across cultural and creative subsectors, industries, institutions, and enterprises. So we know that we have the know-how, the want-to, and the gusto, but sometimes we may not have the resources. So this is precisely the function of the Networks of Culture team, to seek to systematically provide a mapped understanding of this space. The European Union, through cultural relations platforms, engaged the research duo, are you ready? Stephanie Thomas Gilbert Roberts. Yes, now Stephanie Thomas is a dancer. I dance with her, NDTC. We've trotted the stage together, yes. She's an artist and, of course, a respected strategist who currently lives in Brussels. We also have Dr. Deborah Hickling Gordon. Now, she is the lead with us this morning, the lead on this project. So, the very design of this project has sought to engender partnerships and exchange knowledge, an integral principle of the KNOC dot connecting exercise. Which, of course, brings me to our distinguished panel of policy leaders this morning. Now, again, I restate that their presence is a major signal of the synergies happening at the leadership level in policymaking and international cooperation. So, our official opening panel is under the theme, Connecting the Dots, Kingston as a creative city of music. So, during this panel, the leadership present will share perspectives related to the KNOC research process, expected outcomes, and also future activities. Now, each official will be asked 2 themed questions by facilitator and KNOC lead consultant, Dr. Deborah Hickling Gordon. So, first and foremost, I'm very pleased to introduce Senator, the Honorable Aubyn Hill MP, Minister of Industry, Investments and Commerce. There he is with the nod. See him? Yes, there he is. Also, would like to introduce his Mr. Are you ready? Mr. Fredrik Ekfeldt, the Deputy Head of Mission, European Union, Delegation to Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and the Cayman Islands.
Thank you so much.
I love it. So, representing the mayor, we have Robert Hill, the CEO of the city of Kingston, also known as the town centre.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, Deborah, I am going to throw over to Doctor to kick us off with the proceedings. Are we ready?
Yes, we certainly are. Thank you so much for bringing us in. Good morning, everybody. We're going to get right in. Minister Hill, Minister Grange will be joining us shortly, Town Clerk, and Ambassador. Excellencies, all ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm so pleased to see you here this morning at the third and final in the series of Connect the Dots, Link Up events which form the part of the Kingston Networks of Culture Research Activity. I think it's important to state that this is exactly what this is. It's a research activity. All the information that we gather goes towards creating the context of our research. In this process, we've had 3 events, and we've looked at EU-Jamaica relations, we've looked at creative finance, and now we pull it all together with a policy-specific examination of the creative city of music, which is a central focus of our research. We have a distinguished panel, and we're going to go directly to the Minister, Senator Hill, who has joined us for a short moment, and I'm going to ask him his first question. So yesterday we had a series of stakeholder meetings, and a very important point came up, and it was about the formalization of the cultural and creative sector. The point was made that individuals in the sector are being asked to formalize. There's this big push to formalize individuals, but the sector itself is not formally included holistically as a total sector in the national accounts. What is being contemplated for this national formalization of the cultural and creative sector?
First of all, Debbie, let me thank you, Ambassador Van Steen, and her deputy with us this morning. She's traveling, I know. The town clerk, who is representing His Worship the Mayor. And you guys have been doing a great job. I've met you. This is my 3rd time meeting you, in fact, since you've been at this project. Stephanie, all of your team. What I want to say is, yes, the sector is not yet formalized. But here's what we're doing. We're very pleased for the investment being made by the European Union. And from as early as 2020, UNESCO, and with some help from the British Council, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation has been leading a study to look at the formalizing the sector. Statin, who are the people who collect most of our data, have been working with them. It's a project between 2020 and 2023. Now the EU have come in and put some zest and frankly stretch into the whole process to formalize it. So we're working on getting that done, so we have the data on which policy can be made, from which policy can be drawn, and we're down the road with that. And your investment in not only money but the time you've spent here, you and Stephanie and the rest of the team, is just vital to this process to get us there. But there's a second part, and it's almost independent of the first. The second part is businesses, creative people must get formalized. Now, it's almost oxymoronic to say creative people must be formalized, because that's the whole part about creative people. They are creative, they are amorphous, they bring ideas from all places and places that you don't even think of, and yet you're going to tell people who do that on a day-to-day basis that what their life is about, that they must be structured. Now, that is a little bit of a difficulty, but you know, the movie business had to go through it. The music business has had to go through it. Motown didn't start off structured. Motown started off because people were singing.
You know, though, that there was space given to the artistic opportunities, the artistic expression, though, within that
America was
structure.
there. America was there, but Motown didn't wait for the Secretary of Commerce to start them.
This is true.
So the point is, people were singing, and Barry Gordy said, "Look, we're going to have to structurize this and get it done." So we're saying that, but apart from that, remember the investment that the government has in Jamaica Business Development Corporation, and we're working with that to make sure that people who do not normally, big companies don't need JDBC, but small companies do. Creative people do, and so we're offering them that structure and investment from government to help get themselves structured, even while you remain amorphous and creative and don't get stultified by a JBDC or any other government institution. So we're finding that balance between them.
Because I know that you're running, Minister, I'm going to throw your second question at you. We keep hearing it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. In a moment, it will happen. What are the plans that are, tangible plans that are being contemplated in engaging industry and commerce around Kingston as a creative city of music?
I'm glad you say engaging music, industry and commerce.
Absolutely.
Because two of them are in my ministry. However, I want to give again compliment to the European Union. Arguably, the biggest reggae conference takes place in Poland, within the EU ambit. Maybe the second one is in Paris. There is a far over one in Japan, and it's quite big. But in Europe, reggae is big. But the biggest reggae music festival doesn't take place in Jamaica. However, this year, Kingstn marks its 150th anniversary as the capital of Kingston. This year is the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence. Minister Grange, when she comes on, I'm sure is going to talk about that quite a bit. I just had words with the mayor, and the town clerk knows, and others are working, and I want my ministry to work with the Ministry of Culture, the mayor, the municipality, to make this year a very big year for a really big music festival in Kingston. You and I and the European ambassador, Mrs. Van Steen, discussed this last Friday, and we're going to work towards make sure it happens. Andrea Chung, for instance, is very interested in this. We need to bring the people together, and I'm willing to commit my ministry to make sure we make this a success this year, probably around August time. Lots of things will be happening, but now, Town Clerk of my namesake,
Yes, Minister.
we're going to have to make it work.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
Sir?
Deborah, that's my argument for this
Sir,
morning.
events are not policy, and I'm hoping that we're going to be seeing some clear policy directions going forward.
You know, Deborah, I see you keep going back to that. But you know something? I'm from the private sector. And I know that it's businesses that lead policy. The policymakers follow. When you have something for them to make policy on, they will. So together, now that we're looking at where we must go, the policymakers, Minister Grange, I know is completely committed. I've been working on FATF and other things to make the policy work for you, but we need to see many people who are now organized and do business well also get organized so that they can help us with that policy. So together, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely.
We're going to make it work.
All right, sir. I know that you are off on your forays, and we wish you well for a good day. I'm going to turn quickly to the ambassador. Ambassador, welcome. And I would like for you to outline for us, sir. There are a number of projects. This is a small one in the scheme of things that the EU is doing in relation to culture in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. Can you tell us what those are and what the expected impact? We hear about research, but you know, in Jamaica we say research can yam. That means research cannot be eaten. You know, policies can yam. We can't eat those. We need bread and butter. What does that mean for us?
Thank you so much, Debbie, for this question. First of all, I think that it's worth in this context to remember a little bit what culture is. Culture is not a peripheral activity which is just one line ministry taking care of. It's at the center of our societies. Without culture, there is no identity of any country. Culture is so many different things. We are talking a lot about music, but it is also what we are eating, the performing arts, but also our museums, the treasures from our past. So culture is very much an exercise in transmitting from one generation to another the essentials of a society. And this is exactly why the European Union attaches so much importance to culture within the European Union, but also together with our partners. And so already today, Kingston Network of Culture is a typical example of this, where taking up what the minister just said, we need to have a better structure for the artists who are not supposed to be managers, administrators. We need to create the proper framework for them to thrive, so they don't have to bother about these aspects that are detrimental to their creativeness. And so just Kingston Network Culture is, first of all, mapping deficiencies, mapping what is existing, trying to see who can work together with who, and that in itself will contribute at least. We have to be a bit modest also. It will contribute at least to creating this framework that will enable artists to thrive and so they can concentrate on the core business. But there are other aspects as well. Picking up again on the creative proper environment. We should attach importance to structure. Without structure, the artist will be just minor actors. Despite the talent, maybe not being able to they need to be protected also. So the legislative work to create the proper legal environment, so that artists know that what they are creating is protected, is theirs, so that they can use it and earn money on it for them, their family, but also for the nation. This is money that is taxed. And benefits then to Jamaica. So
there is a process of developing legislation that is happening at the moment?
At least we are contributing to the efforts. European Union, to a very large extent, we want to see ourselves as partners in the countries where we are, and the main responsibility for economic development is the partner countries. So we would just like to come in and act as a facilitator. But I know very much that there is a EU UNESCO expert facility that helps the government to draft this proper legislation that will protect your fabulous artists.
I'm very proudly the Jamaica's representative on that facility.
Wonderful. So pleased. I didn't know that. Wonderful. And we shouldn't forget also that on concrete terms also, there is a regional cooperation facility, and that is the Transcultura program.
That's an amazing program.
Yes.
It focuses in on training. It focuses in on capacity building.
But I also think that on concrete enabling artists to meet other artists, and also contributing to organizing events. And so at the center we have Cuba, because we want to allow Cuban artists to not to sit on the island, but also to interact with all the others in the region. So at the beginning it was very much Cuba-centered, but now it's more a regional program than anything else.
Right.
And so
Jamaica is a part of this regional program.
Yes.
Which provides these resources, these enabling resources across. What do we gain from it? What are the actual projects and activities that we're able to gain from?
I think that you will have to ask the Ministry of Culture when she arrives on this
I will do,
aspect.
I will do just that.
But I know that the program itself is very much geared towards concrete results, helping artists
Yes.
to perform, to have an audience, and to meet other artists also.
Yes, I do know that the University of the West Indies is also involved in
Yeah.
that project through the Open Campus. There are a number of courses that are available. There was a call very recently for a number of courses in cultural and creative industries that people can do online.
Yeah.
And this process is about information as well, providing our colleagues and friends and our professional partners in the cultural and creative industries with information so that they know that there are things that are available to them that they can go and seek out. So that's the Transcultura program.
Yes.
And if they were to look that up online, they would be able to find that there are a number of activities from which they can benefit.
Also on our own website and the website of the European Union centrally, the one that we have, the EU delegation, but also the one centrally in Brussels, there's plenty of information about Transcultura program.
And you'll find too on the European Union website a lot of information about the way Europe organizes culture
Yeah.
in general,
Yeah.
and their cultural cooperation. I know there's one more project that you want to tell us about, Creative Caribbean, is there?
Do I have any information on that one?
Okay.
I'll pass on what.
Yes.
However, I'm saving the best for
Okay.
for last. We just entered a new development cycle with Jamaica. So the next programming that stretches to 2027 will be centered into 3 different areas. So sustainable economy. The other one is environment and climate change. And the third one is good governance and human security. Now, you ask me, why do I raise this? Is this to promote other parts of our development aid? No. In all these 3 sectors, it is our firm intention to mainstream culture programs inside all these 3 aspects. You remember what I said at the beginning, culture is at the center of what defines a society. So this is why we think that it has to be factored into all these 3 different areas of cooperation, where we're already working together with the government to ensure that something concrete will come out from it.
Absolutely. All of these areas kind of come together in the cultural agenda.
Yes.
Appreciate that. So we now know that there's a full-scale program, a full-scale structured program through the European Union that focuses in on the area of culture, in addition to all of its other areas of cooperation. Thank you for that information, Ambassador. Going to move to the Town Clerk now. Town Clerk, you're here on behalf of His Worship. Please give him my regards. We can't have a creative city of music without a city.
Absolutely
Yeah? We need the city. And the city itself is that municipal structure through which everything is organized, all of the various elements. My first question is a reasonably tough one, and I want us to, it's important that we face the issues squarely and head on, or we're not going to solve them. And it's about an issue of inclusion. And I raise it because it has come out of the research. The research that we've been doing, a lot of the international individuals that we've been talking to, the experts around the world, have been speaking a lot about this issue of inclusion, especially coming out of the European Union kind of conceptualization of the city. So we have a creative city of music, Kingstn, 2015. There are a lot of fears about individuals going into the city, taking over the city, and displacing the individuals who are there. Issues of gentrification. So I want you to contextualize for us, Town Clerk, issues of inclusion, your commitment to issues of inclusion with regards to the formulation of this creative city of music that we're seeking to examine.
All right, thank you, Debbie, and Ambassador, always good to be with you. and Ministers both Hill and Grange. Thanks for the question. I wanted to open, Debbie, by stating how intimately I've been involved with the Creative City of Music. I'm proud to advise that I and my good friend Gillian McDaniel were the ones that went to Hamamatsu, Japan, and argued successfully for the designation on the UNESCO for Kingston to become the City of Music. With that said, it is always an issue of a learning process, certainly in terms of how we manage the process of creativity and citing spaces and ensuring that persons are not excluded, do not feel isolated, and do not have a sense that it is a scientific gentrification or cleansing of a space to put others in. We, like everybody else on this platform, have been going through a learning process as to how best we continue with this structure. And the structure must have the components of inclusivity, of transparency, of partnership. Our administration is all about that. The fact of the matter is that once we have cited spaces, we go in with the consultation process as normal. Fact of the matter is there are several opinions that portend. There are several issues that we have to face. The issues of public cleansing, the issues of crime, or perception of crime, the issues related to possible displacement of persons and what do you do with that, how do you manage that displacement, and of course it has to be managed within the context of good governance and a broader strategic plan or sustainable development plan for the city. If we do mean creative cities, we have to allow the creative voices, the persons who lead in these creative sectors, to have their opinions weighed properly against the fact that we have a governance structure that we are legally bound to perform within. But how do we manage those relationships and those processes successfully to ensure that there's sustainability, that there's growth, that there's a voice going forward? So that is what we're all about. Admittedly, it is not smooth sailing. However, we continue to take the learnings from each partner that we engage with.
I was going to ask you a little bit about that dichotomy, because very often sometimes in the policy space, we describe things in ways that we want to see them, and we describe things in the ways that we envisage that we can make them
and we have
happen.
to unlearn that process.
Yes, so there's that. But then there's what's on the ground, what really
That's a tougher part.
exists.
Right.
How do we bring those two together in this space that is existing as a creative city of music long before it was declared
Absolutely.
so?
Absolutely.
How do we bring
the space is
the
finite.
reality together?
The space is finite. There are economic and social realities on the ground that we have to contend with, and then to include spaces for creativity, for growth, for thinking, for thought, for discussion, for expansion of culture. People will cite normally the trench towns and the Orange Streets and Beach Street and Fleet Street and so on and so forth. But there are other spaces around. And we learned that through the inclusion and the introduction of the muralization from east to west. And what that has taken us through is a whole cultural shift in how we view art and culture, and how the local government itself did not find itself in that equation until we realized how enriching it was for the social inclusion, for minimizing crime and acts of crassness against each other, and how it now created a new economy that we can build upon and that we can include others in. So it is consistently a series of moving parts. Yes, the realities are on the ground. Yes, there are old habits. Yes, there are societal issues that have been generations old that we have to now break up. And in breaking that up, that does not mean that it has to exclude persons from the process, but in rather now include them in a re-inculcation of what it means to be one Kingstonian and to a creative Kingstonian. That's my view.
Okay. Fantastic. When we come back, we're going to talk about, now that the city has found love, what are we going to do with it? Yes. I understand the minister is here with us and has joined us online. Minister, I'm so sorry you couldn't make it here today. We would have loved to have hosted you in person, but we are so glad that you were able to actually join us online. And we're talking inclusion, Minister. It's a theme that is emerging in discussions of cultural and creative industries. I know you are on the international circuit. I know you are hearing the discussions as they are happening in the context of many countries of the world. But I want us to talk inclusion for Jamaica. I want us to talk inclusion in terms of the Kingston creative city of music that we are envisaging. We should have reached much further than envisaging, but we accept where we are, and we're very happy to have you take us through the plans and processes for inclusion, Minister, addressing that theme.
Thank you, Debbie. I just want to first acknowledge Senator the Honorable Aubyn Hill, and of course, CEO Robert, representing the mayor, and of course, Deputy Head of Mission, Mr. Ekfeldt. It's so good to be here this morning, although I'm not there physically. And Deborah, you've been doing a great job. I've been monitoring on the side, although I'm not physically there. But just to quickly respond to your question and your comments, we acknowledge that there is a need to sustain focused attention on addressing inclusivity at various levels. It is our objective to plan for the development of all sectors and subsectors in a way that achieves integration to all stakeholders. So we together observe that this is a recurring theme in the creative cities in the global south. So I welcome the discussions over the sessions, which I'm advised have underscored that we need to bridge existing inclusivity gaps within our ecosystem to include manifestations such as, one, Jamaica's formal/informal divide within the entertainment, culture, and creative industries. Two, challenges to financial inclusion for creative practitioners in the Jamaican space. And even, say, three, questions of inclusivity within our systems of government, because I am the first to say it's fragmented the way it is. So this is the wonderful thing about research. It allows us to identify issues and move towards addressing them, which is what we are here today about. So policy and inclusion is central to our entertainment, cultural, and creative sector policy and our programs. The challenge for a sector that is pervasive and intersects several other sectors is to ensure that all aspects of its operations are included in a policy deliberation and formulation. The challenge is great. Too often in this discourse, elements are excluded, resulting in a negative impact on the sector. So my ministry, the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, through its national committee and it's the National Council for Cultural and Creative Industry, which we call Jamaica Creative, has a wide representation and is working to ensure that all stakeholders are a part of policy formulation and validation. So among the approaches to ensure no one is left behind is active support for the mapping of the sector and of its ecosystem. So inclusivity in the development, in the promotion of the music industry as an example. So in the era of music, the thrust for inclusion must ensure not just a focus on the artist. And when I say artist, we have to think of the songwriter and the performer and the musician. But we must provide for the equitable participation and development of the technical areas such as sound, lighting, production, stage management, decor, artist manager, road manager, you name them. It is important for us to not ignore these other areas or these individuals, the costume director, the lighting designer, the engineers, because they are a critical part of the sector. So it will not be enough to discuss the status of artists, because the lighting man is an artist. He's designing the lighting, he's creating the lighting, he's implementing what is necessary to create that impact of lighting the performer or lighting the venue. And if the term artist is not used in its generic sense to include all participants, practitioners, and professionals in the various areas of the arts, without ensuring that every aspect of the sector's operations that impact the artist is given credible and substantive space in the deliberations and with respect to opportunities providing for all our practitioners. So the status of the artist must include opportunities for education, training, and development, detailing and ensuring adequate understanding of the various legislation that are relevant to the development and promotion of the artist, examining the financial infrastructure that supports success of the artist, as well as the artist's connection to the art form as a business, a recreation, as cultural creation, etc. So inclusion requires that all discourse on the creative sector seeks to include all elements relevant to and integral to its operations, from conceptualization, incubation, development, to its ultimate consumption locally, regionally, and globally. So
at the center of that are issues of trust, are issues of access. How do we deal with those issues in relation to inclusion?
Well, we have created a very enabling environment through the ministry. And as such, in making sure that all stakeholders have an opportunity to participate and to benefit, we have provided grants to all practitioners, and we have created the platform for easy access. In fact, the platform we created has been so simple and basic that you don't have to be a techie to go online and to access the grants. We ask for basic information. So we're providing grants to all practitioners in the entertainment. And you notice, we're not just saying cultural and creative industries, but we're saying entertainment, culture, and creative industries. So it is important to note that
if I'm an artist, can I just stop in to the minister to ask for some advice or information or direction? I really want to talk about inclusion in real terms, how that works for the everyday artist and practitioner.
It happens every day in this ministry. I'm probably the most accessible minister in government and the most accessible minister ever in the culture, entertainment, and
not of you, minister, but we're asking about the systems. The systems.
Not only am I accessible, and because of my knowledge in the sector I'm able to add value to the position as of minister. But my officers are available, they are accessible. We have numbers that can be easily accessed. We have emails that can be easily accessed. We have officers in office, and we don't just work the normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. Because when we are working, everybody is working. And when everybody else is resting, we are working, because that's the nature of the sector.
All right, I'm going to turn to Mr. Hill, turn to the town clerk for a moment. And I'm going to ask him to describe his vision. What is the vision for the creative city of music?
How much time do you have?
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
10 minutes, Stephanie? 10 minutes?
No, that's fine, that's fine.
And we have one more question for Minister and one more for the ambassador.
Okay, fine. No, I'll try to be as succinct as possible. The administration led by His Worship the Mayor from 2016, and taking from the fact that we were blessed to be the creative city of music that we are, we have found it absolutely necessary to ensure that we do everything possible to ensure that we create the platforms, the facilitation, and all that is necessary to support the creative industry, particularly music, because we have been identified as a cultural heartbeat of the world. I need not go into the history and the groundations of our music and what it has done for the world. The minister has done that several times, and we know she can write a book on it. The fact is that Kingston, as an emerging destination city, has to have that creativity with it. We are going to be bringing back visitors as a tourism hub, right? Not only as a commercial space in which persons conduct commerce, but also for them and others to view Kingston as a multiple type destination. So it is commerce, it is creativity, it is tourism, it is everything else that you wish for. There in Kingston, particularly, there's always, thankfully now that COVID is basically over, Kingston has been known for an event somewhere at every hour of the day. As they say, it is 5 o'clock somewhere, it is always 5 o'clock in Kingston, every time. There, from the hills to the valleys to the cities, to the inner city, there's always an entertainment, something going on. Whether it's a small round robin at a bar, a house party, or a big dance, whatever it is. And so that is part of who we are. Now to capitalize on that culture and to structure it in a way that it allows for that creativity to grow is our job. It's our position to facilitate as best as possible all the creatives in our space. So we see ourselves as the creative heartbeat of the Caribbean, because we have such a multiplicity of talent, a melting pot of creativity, and we must put in place policies and facilitations to allow that to proceed.
What of infrastructure, Town Clerk?
Well, infrastructure is our game. We, as you know, we have been in the news recently for infrastructure development issues. And so it can't be separated. The fact that we have to cite areas, and Minister has assisted us in terms of looking at entertainment zones. She has been passionate about it. And so we have started to cite those, and Minister can provide more detail. So at Fort Rocky, for example, a Harbour View, the stadium is already designated as such. We have to now create more of those areas. So the top of Orange Street, part of Fleet Street in central Kingston, Tivoli Gardens in West Kingston, South Side in South St. Andrew. And as well as in St. Andrew, the Gordon Town and the Dub Club and so on in Ligony area, all of those spaces. And of course, we are here in New Kingston, which is basically the entertainment hub of St. Andrew and the Crossroads itself. So we have to create these spaces for the allowance and for the facilitation, for the growth of creativity, music in particular, but also everything that goes along with it. Minister has spoken about the other, what I would term as the other economies that support it. So the technicians, the stage managers, the road managers, those persons are part of that equation and also need that equal amount of attention and facilitation to ensure that we have a solid platform on which to offer Kingston as a creative city.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
It is good.
Sounds
It is good.
We're gonna
Affirmation.
hold you
Affirmation.
to it. We're gonna hold
Yes,
you,
indeed.
Hold,
Yes, indeed.
The
KSAMC, right.
to this. Ambassador, what next for EU cooperation and Jamaica and culture and creativity and this vibrant space that we have here?
I fear that my ambassador will wrap my wrist. I'm not ambassador, I'm the charge d'affaires, the deputy. But thank you, exactly.
Charge.
But I know that my ambassador, she's been here for almost 2 years now, and she is passionate about Kingstn. We talked before the lights went on with the CEO here, and I told him that our ambassador has visited downtown now several times and is mesmerized, together with me and the rest of the team, by the murals in downtown that are now expanding, which shows also that culture must be diverse. You can't just attach importance to music. Music is the identity, part of the identity of Jamaica. But there are so many other expressions of culture that needs to interact with one another to make Kingstn and Jamaica beautiful. So we certainly will explore ways, together with the office of the mayor and the government, to see what we can do together. And I'm thrilled to hear about the plans here, because they fit perfectly with our modest ambition, and we would like to participate on this magnificent journey. We shouldn't forget also that, we talked about tourism here. European tourists probably more than North American tourists, probably. I shouldn't admit, but I'm biased, I'm European. We want another kind of tourism that is not just linked to the all-inclusive hotels. Already at the all-inclusive hotels, there are thousands of brilliant Jamaican artists that perform. So part of the Jamaican culture is already made available to these tourists. But I think you need a different kind of tourism that arrive and are self-sufficient, that are independent, choosing where they want to go, and can choose on the palette of different supplies offer, a wide offer. So this is something that I would like to bring to the table, that this idea of developing Kingstn into a tourism hub. You will see many more Europeans. And we will be here. We shouldn't forget that European Union is not just institutions. We have 4 embassies here also: France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, huge culture hubs by themselves.
Yes, indeed.
And they are also cooperating together with us, individually also, in bilateral development projects, notably on tourism, together with Jamaica. And this is exactly what we're waiting for. We want to have better offer of culture for European tourists to come. And let me be assured, we will respond present. We will be there to partner with you on this.
It sounds to me like we have some dots connecting right here.
Yes, yes.
Which is what we're about.
Excellent.
Minister, we're wrapping up, and of course you get the last word. Absolutely. And I want us to talk about literally connecting the dots. I want us to talk about pulling all of these pieces together, because you have the macro responsibility for all of these tiny incremental pieces, the middle-sized pieces, bringing the industries together, all of those of us who are crushing and quarreling with each other and having to sort out, some of the personality issues, all the way up to the top policy issues. And you know how we are in the cultural and creative industries. How do we pull it all together, Minister? What is the plan? What's the strategic part?
Well, Deborah, first I must say it's not an easy road. Trust me, it's not an easy road. And as we do the things we have to do, the entertainment, culture, and creative industry is taken more seriously by many other beasts.
Yes, indeed. So you were saying, Minister, we're talking about strategic coordination.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, there is that fragmented approach. It is fragmented within the private sector and within the public sector. There are at least 5 ministries that have a little bit and a little piece of entertainment, culture, and the creative industries. And more ministries are coming on board as the sector, the orange economy grows, and it becomes even that much more attractive and becomes that much more important. And so we have, coming out of a study that was done, commissioned by the PIOJ, and I mean, it's years through the present administration, the previous administration. Deborah, you have been a part of that as well. And what has been recommended, we have now put in place. And that is what is called the Cultural and Creative Industries Council. And for short form, we call it Jamaica Creative. And it will include all the ministries that would impact on the sector. And in addition to that, all the entities in civil society and in the public sector that would impact also on the CCI, ECCIs. So that body has been put together. We have had recommendations and nominations from the different entities. And we have a secretariat established in the ministry. We have been doing the work. So, but the formal launch of Jamaica Creative will be done during the 60th anniversary of Jamaica's independence. Our launch is going to be big, but what we have done in the meantime is small but important steps. We had recently this workshop that included young people, because it's important to ensure that our young people are involved in whatever formal activities we structure. And so we have this culture and creative industries workshop that we brought in young people from sixth form, from tertiary education institutions that were interested in the creative industries. And we had them, we selected interns out of that program. And those interns will work along with established professionals in the sector, as well as agencies in government that deal with entertainment, culture, and the creative industries. We're gonna choose 60 this year. We have already identified 30, and we have 30 entities or individuals who have taken them on. And the next 30 will be announced shortly. So we will have 60 for this year. It will become an annual activity. We're going to go out in the rural areas. We're going to do regional workshops, and we're going to involve all the agencies across government and the private sector so that we can have a more joined up approach, connecting the dots. That is what it's about. And out of all of that, we also intend to have our draft legislation ready this year that would address incentives, fragmentation, bringing it together, that will address infrastructure, that will address all aspects of giving more strength and more structure to what in the past has been referred to as an informal sector. It's really not an informal sector, but there are many informal participants who we are now bringing into the space in a formal way. So even for the COVID grants, they have had to register on the e-registry. They've had to be a member of one of the sector organizations. They have to have TRN, tax compliance where it's necessary. tax compliance certificates, we're bringing them into the system so that they can benefit in a more substantial way from their creative works. And we're able to give them more capacity strengthening and capacity building. So I don't know if that has answered your question.
It has, in fact, Minister. It occurs to me that if there was a periodic process of information sharing in different sorts of ways, many of us who believe that there is nothing happening and that there is no work happening, that we would be, kind of better informed. Because I have received a lot of information today about some of the activities, and I'm sure there are people who, I knew of some of them before. There are people who would not have known. So I think this has been, getting this information from the town clerk. I'm pleasantly surprised at some of the information I've received. And of course, from the ambassador, I want to thank all three of you and the minister and Senator Hill, who had to leave us early for another event. It's wonderful to hear from our policymakers that there are activities that are happening in our name and in our behalf as Jamaican people. And I thank you all for coming as we continue to connect the dots as a part of this series. I thank you, Minister. I thank you, Town Clerk. I thank you, Chargé, for joining us today in this forum.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been
wonderful.
True pleasure.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful, wonderful panel discussion. Listen, I am engaged. I am excited. I am enamored. So many things are happening. We spoke about creating a framework that will enable artists to thrive, and I do believe that, because as creatives, we find that our creative juice, really our business and administrative skills, right? So I love that it was discussed today about creating a better framework for our artists to thrive. We also spoke about inclusivity as well, that we need policy and legislation to ensure that everybody, we're mapping across different genres, across different industries, to ensure that our creatives have the support that they need. The minister also spoke about I love the initiative, the initiative that took place over the COVID, to incentivize persons to ensure they have the business aspect of their creative drive going, the TRNs, the funding, the stuff like that, to make sure that they're registered, because that is definitely necessary for us to be able to map and to see what is happening, ensure that everybody is together, everybody is communicating and talking, and I'm just super excited. Something that I think we forget as well as creatives is to talk about the intellectual property of what it is that you've created, something that I don't think gets enough attention. Everything that you do creatively is your intellectual property, and that it needs to be protected and safeguarded. So I am so excited that we're having that wonderful conversation. Deborah was a wonderful, wonderful facilitator. I can't wait to hear so much more about what she has to say. Yeah, I'm excited. We are now going to jump over to our next panel discussion. I know that you guys are riveted at home. You're watching on Zoom, also on various social media platforms. I just want you guys to join the conversation. Hashtag us, or hashtags that we want you guys to use is hashtag KNOC, okay? Also, hashtag connect the dots. And also, finally, hashtag networks of culture. But I know that Twitter likes to engage in rampant, vibrant conversations. So Twitter, talk to us. The Twitter handle is at NOC_culture. Once again, Twitter at NOC_culture. Now the metaverse and also Instagram, yes, talk to us. The handle there is at networks of culture. All right, guys, talk to us, get it interactive. So much was discussed today. I really don't want you guys to miss out on your points of view being heard, okay? So without further ado, let me jump on to introduce our next panel of discussions. All right, exciting. Let me get it up right here. So, the focal point of KNOC's research in Kingston, a creative city of music, relates to what is included in space, and by infrastructure, we mean the digital, the cultural environment. What exists is that space. It speaks to the arts and industry. It speaks to identifying the old and the new. It is really getting the soul of the city and what are big ideas and visions for infrastructure. Now we hear buzzwords like art districts. Should we be creating districts and creative districts? These are some of the considerations for our next panel. So Hickling Gordon, all right? I also want to welcome this wonderful panelists. Firstly, we have Tyrone Wilson, and he's the president and CEO of iCreate. See him there, looking all hands up. See him there? There he is. There he is. Yes, we have Mr. Kirk Buchanan, the former deputy CEO, CPTC, digital entrepreneur. There he is. And finally, we have Dr. Carol Archer. She's a professor of urban planning, community development, and public policy at UTech. Welcome, panelists. Over to you, Deborah. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Deborah's like,
ready
raring to go, long time. All right, Deborah, take it away.
All right, wonderful. So we established in the last panel, welcome everybody, that we can't have a creative city of music without a city, right? And within a city, we have this thing that we call infrastructure. When we think of a creative city, we're thinking of an ecosystem at work, literally putting all the pieces together. And our infrastructure has to take into account all of the elements of this ecosystem, the economy, social life within the city, the soundscapes and the landscapes, this issue of the Noise Abatement Act and so on, and that all of that feeds into issues of infrastructure in ways that we may not necessarily think about landscape, what is appropriate to put where and so on, what is aesthetically pleasing, what is not aesthetically pleasing. These are a lot of the considerations that we need to think about. What is practical, what is functional, culture at work. So it's personified, it's individual, what people like as individuals, it's natural, and the built environment working in tandem. So I interviewed recently a town planner who lives in Australia. He's a Jamaican, and his name is Dominic Hudson. He's a town planner in Brisbane, Australia. His heart is here in Kingston, though. He grew up here in Kingston, and I asked him instinctively, based on his knowledge of town planning, but also based on the information that he would have gathered in the urban spaces of Brisbane, what instinctively were the issues of infrastructure development for Kingston that you know, what came to mind for him. And the thing that he said to me that really stayed with me, and we're really going to be starting at this point, is start from where you are and with what you already have. I thought that was pretty profound, because we keep on, when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about what we want, right? And we talk about what we're going to build and where we're going to go. But this notion of starting with what you have. So I want to indicate that we did invite the UDC. Unfortunately, they were not able to join us today, but the research does contemplate their perspectives, and we have plans to have further discussions with them. So today we're talking with individuals that have the expertise, the lived and worked professional expertise in specific areas of infrastructure development in different ways. Professor Colleen Archer, years of experience, and her wisdom precedes her, and in anything to do with the built environment and community development. Kirk Buchanan, multifaceted technical consultant who has worked in both the private and the public sector. And of course, Tyrone Wilson, who is a visionary entrepreneur and has, taken a number of the ideas and actually brought them to life. And his visions continue to be spun into realities for the sector. I want to welcome everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to start with Prof. Archer. I want you to put in context for us the infrastructure needs for a creative city of music. In particular, though, our creative city of music.
Right. Thank you, Deborah, for having me. And I was so excited because oftentimes the planners, the city planners, or the architects, they are not brought to the table. So I welcome this opportunity. And to let you know that as far back as when I heard the town clerk mentioning the designation of Kingston as a creative city, I was working with NEPA, the National Environment and Planning Agencies, to put together the development order for Kingston, which is the legislation that governs land use and land use management for the parishes. So we were looking at the time at Kingston, when the Kingstn and St. Andrew, when the designation came. We had UDC at the table, we had the KSAMC at the table, and others. And immediately we looked to the policies that we would need to put in place to support that designation. Yes? But we also looked at what we had to support that new designation. And one of the things that we did, we went on a tour of Kingston and St. Andrew. We literally drove, and these are technocrats, the planners, the architects, and others associated with the built environment. And we literally drove through Kingston and St. Andrew looking at land use and land use facility to support this new designation, among other things. Other things such as the global framework that speaks to the city that we want to create, cities of the future, which is the framework, the new urban agenda framework for the sustainable goal 11, safe, inclusive, and resilient cities.
Break that down a little, Prof. Break
Sure.
it down. Let us all be able to understand what it is you're talking about. I want to understand clearly. Break it down a little.
Sure. So we have this new designation. Yes?
Yes.
Do we have the requisite regulatory framework to support this new designation?
No,
That's
that's
one.
I understand.
Do we have the new regulatory framework? Because that's what the development order is. To support not just that designation, but how we see the city growing and changing. Yes? And do we have the regulatory framework to support us achieving Sustainable Goal 11? Yes?
So I'm going to ask you the question. Do we?
Yes, we do for the most part. We have some challenges. What are those challenges? So, for example, most of the creative activity or the creative industry often take place in spaces that are considered public spaces, open spaces. We do not have the requisite number, if we were to follow the provisions of the new urban agenda framework, where based on our population size, we would designate the requisite recreation open public spaces that would allow for this. We do not have, where we do have, they are not maintained. We do not have the governance and management structure for maintaining those spaces. So, for example, if we were to look at a Papine Park, yes, where we have the two major universities and other tertiary institutions in that area, and that's an area that I've been working with. We have been pushing for and we have gone to the extent of redesigning the Papine Park, coming through public consultation, having designed the park, even suggesting a management or a governance framework, and this has been fully documented and published, we propose to the government that for this public space to allow for the creative activity that is necessary and is in tandem with an area where we have a tertiary institution, we made some recommendations. Well, unfortunately, we are yet to realize those recommendations that have been very well studied and documented. So that is why I'm saying we do not necessarily have the infrastructure to support fully the creatives. And one other thing, Deborah, we would, for example, and I'm sorry that the town clerk has left, but for example, an inventory of open public spaces where we can carry out some of these creative activities. Whether it's at the local level, at the municipal level, or within even the wider government. We do not have a listing. We do not have them being properly maintained, being budgeted for. And so that's why I am at this point, making that conclusion.
Interesting. Very, very interesting stuff. So, Tyrone.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, sir, we're talking about, we're putting things in the context of policy.
Right.
But you are always quick to say that policy must respond to the market, yeah?
Yes.
And you are a man who believes in issues to do with the market and in the context of your infrastructure planning, as a businessman,
right,
you have seen ups and downs. Yeah?
Yes.
And so I want you to tell me, you've created large infrastructure. You have used infrastructure as a part of your kind of business model. And I want you to kind of describe that process for us. And before we go into your big plans and visions, let's evaluate where we are, in terms of the infrastructure development regarding cultural and creative industries, our current market, the construction boom, what we already have. Let's do the gap analysis. What, as an entrepreneur, what does that mean to you?
Okay, thank you for that, Prof. So currently, we came up with this concept in 2020 as part of the whole Creative City Initiative to build physical infrastructure to support the growth of the creative economy in Jamaica.
This is I Create Limited.
Right. Our initial assessment, just me being an entrepreneur in the digital and creative space, is that, I kind of see the growth being needed in two areas, right? One is the human, what I would call human capital infrastructure, right? Or human infrastructure in terms of talent, the talent pool, and you would understand that through, your dealings with CPTC and so forth, just in terms of constantly building, programs to support the growth of individuals within the space to capitalize on local opportunities, but, the more global scale now that's happening. I Create has been doing that through training also, digital training, creative training, more focused on the short skills training is what I would call it, anywhere from a day to a year. But then we started to churn out, hundreds of students per quarter. We realized that there's no physical infrastructure that enables them to continue to grow as professionals in the field. And what I meant by that is, one, state-of-the-art video production studio that can create content for the likes of Netflix, Disney Plus, all of those, sound stage, dubbing stage, animation studios, editing suite. These things did not exist on a large scale that can position Jamaica as a, I would say, the creative hub, creative and cultural over the region, to take advantage of what is happening globally, right? And what is happening globally is that Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, Hulu, you name it, all of these companies are, they've created a content boom because of their demand for original content to grow their subscription. And compared to cable is largely physical in terms of satellite and all of these things and the kind of broadcasting and content rights. But with OTT over the top, it now enables a more broader geographical expansion. And, you know, Netflix and so forth needed to have African content to showcase their development and to build their market share, right? Same for the Caribbean. It won't happen as quick as the African content and Nigeria, Nollywood and so forth, and India, Bollywood, but it will happen here in the Caribbean soon, right? And what that means is that we have to be ready to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that will come. We need the infrastructure, and that is my kind of assessment of it. And that infrastructure is, you know, what we've kind of put into our whole business model
Okay, we're going to come to
creative
we're going to
city.
come to what it looks like.
Yeah, man, for sure.
But you've really set the context.
Yes.
In terms of why we need to be moving towards looking at infrastructure in a different
Precisely,
way.
right.
And it's the perfect opportunity to bring in Clerk Buchanan, who has been around the process of infrastructure development since infrastructure development in this area began. No? is that a stretch, Clerk?
That's bit, but I mean,
It's close.
been around.
It's close.
Been around, yes.
I mean, you've been here from the days of JDC. You've
Yes.
been here through CVM. You've been here through CPTC. You've been here through liberalization.
That's correct.
Which has changed the infrastructure needs, yeah? So there was a time for those young people who might be joining us when we only had one TV station, yeah? And then we went to two. And of course, the infrastructure needs change. Take us through that trajectory, Kirk, and to where we are. And why is that knowing that trajectory important?
Okay, good. I want to break it up into two parts because in terms of infrastructure, there is the broadcasting, television, and production type of infrastructure and space. And there's also now the space for live television events, it's a big stage show, and stuff like that. And you ask the question most of, for the other panelists, where are we? Where are we now? And the truth is, let's just look at what pertains now in Kingston, and it probably mirrors what happened across the rest of the island. In Kingston, we have the National Arena, we have the National Stadium, we have up by Hope Road there, by the JCDC complex there, Ronnie Williams,
Sabina
right?
Park.
We have Sabina Park. These are some of the spaces that we use, but they're not built primarily to accommodate creative, large-scale production. Those are facilities built for something else, Sabina, for cricket. And each time you go into an institution like that, you have to rebuild, and you have to configure it to facilitate what you want as a creative space. If you look at even the indoor facilities zone and the major production area, that is what happens as well. If you look at the arena is a multi-purpose unit and it accommodates some of the bigger indoor stage show. Outside, there are no structures, except if you look at Jam World in the earlier years where Jam World was there as a space you could go in and just work with it. But what happened to those facilities? They don't have the infrastructure, light, water, power. They don't have what it takes to make that infrastructure readily available for a I-Create team to come in and create an event.
So let's just kind of pull it back a little. A large show needs to need somewhere to stage this event. They choose one of these areas and they go in to have this large show. Let's think of the Buju Banton concert the other day.
Yeah.
Shaggy and Friends, these large concerts. What do they have to do? Let's talk about the tonnage of equipment that have to be moved into these spaces, load in and load out.
And this is exactly where I'm coming from. So, going back to the story you mentioned about your friend, the gentleman you spoke to who said, look at what you have and build from what you have to see if you can grow bigger, because it just won't happen overnight. We won't get a massive structure in Jamaica. So, if you look, for instance, at Buju Banton's show, the stadium was full to capacity. But at the same time, the owners of the stadium had to be looking at how do we protect our field? What do we do? What we have to lay down to make sure how much plyboard that to put on to make sure that people don't damage our football field so that we can play a match later on. So that is what is happening. What we need to do now is look at how we enhance what is there, but it would have to be at some point creating structures that's dedicated towards that. I mean, I heard the minister mention about what she's doing out at Port Royal. That is going to be the solution to the problem, where you have these large spaces specifically for creative outpour, creative development, and accommodating large audiences to become profitable. And it must be in a way where you literally walk on those on stage and can get what you want with just little modification. Now, every venue that we have existing, you have to go in and build out every time to create the structure.
Yes,
and that in itself is a problem, right?
I remember when being at the OPM, whenever they had the large shows there, what it would take just to kind of bring in all of that infrastructure. And I always wondered why they didn't just, kind of use, there's only a fence that divides OPM from Randy Williams
and King's House.
And Louise Bennett.
Right.
And they could create a permanent space there and call it OPM West or OPM something,
The town planner will tell you though, Deborah, that we have a thing about the noise and the houses in that area. So we have to look now at, are the spaces that exist, that are in existence, adequate to do what we want to do? Because we in Jamaica don't close on a show at 10 o'clock in the night to allow everybody to go and sleep.
We don't start
Right.
till 1 o'clock.
We don't start until 1 o'clock, right? But I just want to point out, in terms of those facilities, if you look at the Shaggy Show and the Shaggy Show or the Budget Show, you're talking about speakers, screens, lighting equipment, trussing to create the kind of ambience that you want. And we just don't have that structure. And I'm hoping, like I say, when Port Royal and Aubyn build out, we'll kind of see something like that happening, where people can go into a space and feel comfortable. But as it is now, the structures that we have here are inadequate to accommodate what we want.
We're going to come back to some of the broadcast structures that exist because we have really some of the finest structures.
I want to speak to that because that's my baby.
But we're going to come back. I mean, there's so much that, I'm excited about that, just thinking about it. But let's talk a little bit. So we're talking about purpose-built infrastructure for the purpose of entertainment, culture, and creative activities. Prof, it brings to mind issues to do with these concepts of cultural districts, art districts, entertainment districts, performance and districts. Talk to us about, these concepts of what we need to do to form these enclaves.
Right. Well, as it relates, and that goes under the ambit of land use management, so how you would designate, how you would zone a space to support the activities. So when we recognize that this designation, the Creative City, was upon us, we looked at areas and made recommendations for the development order to be included in the development order. Certainly, downtown crossroads were considered. And one of the reasons why we considered those spaces, we looked elsewhere, far and wide, and whether it is in Europe or in North America, what you found where you have those art districts, whether it's the the space you see in Miami or elsewhere in New York or in Amsterdam, you have high density mixed use. So you have residential, commercial, the city center pretty much. So we recommended that the areas in downtown Kingston, where you have the market district already, where historically you had those kinds of activities taking place, that would be an area to be zoned for that type of activity. And you see reference to that now when you look in that piece of legislation. Yes?
So what does that mean for the people who live in that area?
Well, then you know that when you live in those spaces, they are usually people, residents of those areas are people who want to be in that type of setting, yes, who are supporting that type of industry. So it comes with, you know, you want to live in the Soho, or you want to live in the, you know, the Canary Wharf section of town.
You know, that's interesting, you know, Prof. What about where those spaces are, I don't want to use the word imposed. I want to use that there's an evolution there.
Yes.
That they develop in those areas where individuals already work. How do we create that integration?
Right. So another place where this could be easily achieved, which is why we made those designations, is in Crossroads, where you already have those activities taking place. It's mixed use. And because of our housing needs, because there's significant shortage in terms of affordable housing, that you would make sure that the infrastructure support not just that type of commercial or creative activity, but housing supply that would cater to individuals at all levels of the economic spectrum. Yeah, so those are some of the consideration, which is what happens in most creative districts across the world. Yeah.
You know, again, you know, from the last panel, there's this issue of our aspiration and what we want to see and what really is. You know, and so we have to kind of find a way to bridge those activities. Tyrone, so you have plans, you have a vision. What does that look like?
Well, as it relates to the creative city, the physical infrastructure, we have formed a company, I Create Creative City Limited, to build purpose-driven real estate spaces, right? And they will be anchored by creative ventures. And I always say that it's clusters, it's different locations and clusters that together form what we call I Create Creative City, right? So Cluster 1, for example, let's say in Lady Musgrave, for example, might be a location that owns a creative institution like an iCreate or a CPTC or so forth. We have other locations that might be anchored by a museum. We're looking at several museums. We're looking at building out a Business Hall of Fame museum that, you know, will form part of the creative city. It's all about purpose-driven real estate space that aids in the development of the creative economy. So, you know, Jamaica is rich on culture. I mean, we're you know, we've created several genres of music. We're creative people. We have several institutions that focus on that. But we have to now invest in certain infrastructure to support these individuals who have trained to get meaningful employment through outsourcing opportunities that is big now from Fiverr, Upwork and so forth, but also through creative infrastructure that exists. Museum business models are big around the world. Some are for-profit, some are non-profit. The ones that we are looking at are for-profit museum models that are sustainable over long term and also attract tourism, you know, market in terms of foreign currency, constant development of content to support these museums. So there will be heavy digital museums too, in terms of the content form that will be there. You know, so there will be studios, broadcasting studios, animation studios, editing suite. But the critical component is to partner with some of these pension funds and investment companies to realize what we're trying to do. So there's a fundamental aspect that they look at. If we buy these buildings, how do we get the return? Right? So that's one thing. And then two, working with businesses, companies, private entities, overseas companies to fill up the spaces of these creative cities that we're building. So when you look at like in South Africa, for example, where, you know, it's a big outsourcing destination now for films, that movie with Denzel Washington and I don't remember his name now, was filmed in South Africa as part of that initiative, right? And now a number of films are being made in South Africa, international films, but because of that creative city that they've built, studios, soundstage, they have talent and everything to support the growth. So we have to look at it from those areas.
Something really interesting the other day, the island of Nevis is creating itself into a sound stage, you know,
Yes.
a place, a location for, you know, the kind of tropical island kind of movies. So it's happening in the Caribbean. There's a lot that we definitively have to do. Close off your vision, you know, tell us what.
Thank you. Yeah, so you know, we're getting different. Over the last 2 years, we have been doing some stakeholder kind of engagements. We've been engaging some of the largest pension funds in Jamaica to understand what we're doing. They're holders of some of the they're the largest holders of real estate space because of their kind of investment model. So it begins with them one to acquire and own the spaces, and then we've been talking with entrepreneurs and professionals within the space. So for example, let's say we build a huge co-working space that creatives can come in, access graphic design studios and so forth, all equipped with tools and so forth, and they just rent.
So what's the economic model in terms of the relationship?
With the pension funds and those, it varies. So we want the pension funds and other high net worth private investors to own the spaces. So there are two things where we're partnering with some of them in terms of the development, in building out the spaces. They'll get a return on that, or they sometimes own the entire building. And then we now work with the different entrepreneurs and professionals in the space to run their companies within this creative city, right? So a main event, a lab, and I create, you know, all of these different companies to own these spaces. But outside of creative ventures, of course, we'll be opening up these spaces to other individuals who fall outside of a creative space. So doctor office, lawyer office, a bank, whatever, because we have to kind of balance how we structure the deals.
Let me ask you a question. Is our eye bigger? Are we cutting our clothes, you know, beyond our cloth? And I'll tell you why I ask. I remember I was fortunate to be able to go to LA and visit one of the large sound stages.
Yes.
And I remember seeing there were three young men sitting down in them shorts and, you know, look like absolute vagrants in front of a trailer. You know, the trailer that you see at the wall. And on the sign on the trailer said Bart Simpson. That's their space. There were 10 or 20 of these trailers. One said Bart Simpson, one said another big show that you see. They literally were working within trailers in a trailer city, in these large. So is it possible for us to even, yes, the grand vision is wonderful. I can imagine, but can we start with 22 trailers in a trailer park?
I think we have already. To be honest, I think locally we have, and Kirk mentioned it, we have these kind of specialized areas, you know, like the indoor arena. We're a notch above that, and that still plays a role, because some of these are like pop-up spaces. Those trailers move. You know, you might see it there, and then you see it in Mobe or another area that they kind of, you know, have those. So it's a more diverse approach to it that we have to look at. And, you know, for me, my mandate has always been to bring in the investment community, because until capital is flowing to this space, the sustainability of it is not going to hold. You know, so yes, those exist now. Even in Jamaica, they exist. Pop-up spaces, or we set up a jam world for Sting and those things, and we outfit arena and so forth. They exist. I think we now have to put in a broader vision and support that.
But Deborah, I'm challenged, to be honest with you, because one of the things that I know I was troubled by when we were looking at, well, do we have the infrastructure to deal with this creative city designation, when you have calls on a regular basis into the KSAC or into NEPA that, you know, this music studio next door to me, the people are standing outside and the noise and the, you know, all of that. I think one of the things that we need to do as we look to the larger vision is to ensure that we bring the residents of Kingston and elsewhere along with us, yes, so that they share this vision. Yes, because it's very difficult to convince someone living in Hope Pastures that because we're a creative city, that every weekend they must be disturbed by events at Hope Gardens. Yes, so we need to ensure that we have the spaces. Right? So it doesn't always have to be a Hope Gardens. It can happen here, it can happen there. So because there are certain spaces now that are very pressured, because you have the concentration of the music studios or the concentration of filming videos. Yes, they are very pressured. So I think we need to, one, indicate to the general population what it means for them and engage them in the process, because that's all part of the inclusiveness that you talk about. That is very, very key. So if a community we have identified as such, right, whether it's a downtown or it's a Hope Pastures, we need to be in a position to fully engage the residents of the area to say, this is what it means for you as an individual. Also, this is what it means for you in terms of your bottom line, socially, financially, and otherwise. Yeah. So I think that is key. Right?
I want us to talk about some of these studios, because I think there are some gems that we have that we don't even know that we have, or people are not aware of the value and the importance of some of the infrastructure that already exists. Talk us through some of that.
First thing I want to do is put things in perspective, because, you know, size is relative. For instance, when you look at the English-speaking Caribbean, Deborah, without a doubt, the three largest studios exist right here in Jamaica, within the English-speaking Caribbean.
Name them.
The CPTC studio, the old JBC studio at Southern Avenue, and the TVJ studio. Those are the three largest studios in the English-speaking Caribbean. Television production studio.
And TVJ has now gone digital.
Digital, right, fully digital. And the challenge you have is, like, a TVJ use their studio for multiple purposes. So they might block out a corner of their studio and create a morning time set, which is almost permanent. So they never usually have that studio space available in its entirety. So in terms of available space, you'd say the CPTC studio is still there, and it's 60 by 40. I'm from feet days, so 60 by 40.
What does that mean?
It's a 60 feet long by 40 feet wide space, right? Well, I mean, I'm just saying, in comparison to the region, we are big, but it's not big enough, because at this point now you need sets, sound sets that you can drive a car on, do things within that studio space. But that is what exists now. And your question was, is it adequate? It is doing the job, but it is not enough for where iCreate wants to go in terms of multiplicity of production and creating separate sets in one location so that you can move from one to the other. And in other words, what is happening now with these small sets? What you could do in 5 days take you an additional 3 or 4 days, because you can only do one thing at a time in a podcast, and you have to go back in and redesign the set to facilitate another prop. So the thing is that it probably turned out to be not as productive as you want it to be. But going down the line, let me tell you, Jamaica, as I said, I remember you mentioned Nevis, Jamaica, as I said, has been doing well because the natural beauty of the country, people come and use Jamaica, as I said. So they go to Portland, they go to this, and it has been working. It's working for those international audience, and even for some of the Jamaican production companies who want to do something. But we want to go beyond that. I mentioned Nollywood, and so we want to start creating our own production, and the guys in Jafta will tell you that we don't want to own. Sorry?
In addition to which, the movies are now creating the seascapes in the studio.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly the point I'm making. So some of these guys now want to be able to move to where they can go into a space and create. We don't have that in Jamaica. What we need is a large, what we call a sound studio. Maybe a combination of those trailer parks they're talking about, but something large where I can drive my car on the set, I can move it, I can do all kind of animated stuff on the set and get things done.
Where would you locate that though, from a land use planning?
Well, clearly,
I don't think it would be in a Kingston per se.
No, maybe because you probably want, and you're probably looking at some of those portable spaces, those big empty spaces that you're not in, because you're talking about days of work on a sound stage.
Audiovisuals.
Yes, yes.
Right? And cultural, the Kingston as a creative city of music is really an ecosystem. Basically, where our research is telling us, what research is that music and audiovisual are the core.
Yes.
It's the center around which everything else will pivot. Yeah?
Yes.
So there's the art and the artisan. There is the performing arts. There the architecture itself. There, you know, how do we make room in a kind of plan? And I want to talk about planning to you, that 10-year plan that we need to have, or do we have, that needs to take into account these things that must include a reggae music museum. Goodness gracious. And must complete one theater without aluminum window.
Yes, you know,
and so on.
Deborah, you're on a point where, like I said, leaving the music out and the filming out, we still need spaces for that part of the creative. You know, I heard the minister talking a while ago about the gains from developing a good creative industry, but what must happen is some infrastructure, plan infrastructure where you start to look at not just the music and the film, but the artisan, you know, the artists,
fine artists, right, and visual artists.
That's correct.
The gallery spaces, the museums.
To convert it so that when you come as a creative, you are really a creative city and not just a city of music and video. You know, and that for me, what is missing, and identifying those spaces. Like I said, whatever happened to like a jam world as a space, you know? I mean, it was a big space, you know. I don't know where else we can find in Kingston. But
so as we kind of wrap up and close off, planning, the process of planning. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we do have the planning mechanisms in place. We do have, it was done with consideration as Kingston as a creative city in the existing development order. What we are having issues with, serious challenges, is when the KSAC, because that's where we are now, you know, in terms of focusing on Kingston, when they approve development, they don't take these things into consideration. So even the need for the public space, the community parks, where you can have some of these activities taking place, there is limited at best provisions made for these types of activities. That's one. But in undocumented, it says that's what we ought to do. Secondly, that is the challenge is further heightened, is the maintenance and management of what currently exists. Yeah. Some of these parks are community parks, but communities do not have the requisite support to manage and maintain these parks. Yes? And if you ask KSAC, I'm sorry that the town clerk isn't here, the budget that has been allocated for the maintenance of these spaces, trivial at best.
So what we're saying then is that we have a cycle. We have underutilized spaces.
Yes.
And that results in the absence of maintenance of spaces.
Yes.
Which results in turn with decaying spaces. And so we literally have to put a plan in place to ensure.
No, we have the plans in place.
The plan is in
They're
place.
just not implemented.
What does the plan say, Prof?
Well, for example, the plan would indicate that in particular residential development, you have spaces designated, open public space to support these kinds of activities. It ought to be that the developer and or the community put in a structure, financial and governance, to manage the space. That is not done. But the policy speaks to it, but that is not done.
Okay, so now we know what is not done. Now we know what we want to see. Now we know what we had. Where we're going. How do we fix it? How do we sort it out? What are the advocacy measures? I mean, real tangible measures. What are the financial measures? What are the entrepreneurial measures? What are the basic, getting our hands dirty measures?
Right. Well, I'm happy to see that the EU is on board, and within our parliament, they are on board because they've been talking about, enhancing the policy and the governance framework to allow for this to happen. So that is in itself encouraging. I would like to see at the local level, the local government level, the KSAC, just as basic, an inventory of these spaces, a management plan, management and maintenance plan for these spaces, and budgeting for the management and maintenance of these spaces.
Yes, that's interesting, yes. So just to say that if there are people online who want to send in a couple questions, we're moving towards that in another 2 minutes as we wrap up the discussions. So please send in your questions. We have a couple of people who are taking them, and they will feed them to us, and we'll ask the panelists. We don't have a lot of time left, but we're happy to kind of engage with those of us who are kind of participating from cyberspace.
I just like to add, Prof, I believe it was Andrea Demsa-Chung who raised a point at our Observer Business Forum. I remember the exact term, but I think it was a SAR within the government, maybe the OPM, who can work across the different subsectors of the creative economy to kind of substantially fill the gaps, right? Because there are a lot of initiatives happening which, when you look at it on a chart, it makes so much sense, but at times there are silos. A lot of what needs to be done obviously involve a great amount of government support in terms of policy, and of course the private sector support. But I think now the kind of connecting the dots is a perfect term that we have to now really connect the dots, right?
Make it happen.
Make it happen. I think Andrea and I sat, I think it was a week and a half ago, just in terms of some things that we're looking at. We've always been working together, but there's so much happening in terms of data, in terms of research, in terms of policies within different organizations. I think it's like, if we look at it coming together now, it's extremely powerful, and having that, I think it's a SAR, I don't remember the term.
Yes, she had indicated that there needs to be a SAR, a kind of coordinating force,
right,
for all
that
of the
brings
elements
together the ministries, and also I think private sector too, right? Because we have the formula, we've done the work, we've done the groundwork, we've done the research, we have all the policies, we've been engaged in so many different research and policy discussions and so forth, and I think now we're so equipped with data and information to really make substantive moves. So I think that's what I would like to join that call, really, and play my role in making that happen.
Yeah, okay, so big appeal for that coordinating element, a clear strategic coordinating, actionable, implementation driven coordinating force. Kirk,
Connecting-
where we're going? What do we need?
Connecting the dots, and I want to go there because we have to use what we have and build on it, right? You know, we all have dreams. I mean, 20 years ago, what I was dreaming for, I'm still dreaming about it. But we have moved significantly. The question is, spaces to be created to accommodate not just our core business, which is music and video production, but we need to create something that encompasses the multiple creative areas, the artists, everything you mentioned. Because if we do that, then there's more business for these spaces rather than just limited to one event, one big stage event, one big video shoot. You know, so for me, the key thing now is to connect the dots is really down to look at the existing spaces and maximizing them right now. But what must happen is that we have to create spaces now that will accommodate more people and the infrastructure in terms of getting the electrical in, getting the parking spaces and getting all of the stuff that can make these events and less of recreating every time and moving into a space where you can just build and get something happen. I want to say one other thing here is that the industry is not dying in terms of opportunities. I know for sure, right, for instance now, that we probably need to look beyond Kingston. There are so many land spaces in the Montego Bay area, which is where the people want to go in terms of production. If it's going to talk about production and music. So, and I know, for instance, that there are opportunities being developed right now. I know of private individuals who are advanced in building a big sound stage.
Yeah.
In the Montego Bay area.
Yes, I've heard of it.
And it seemed to be happening now. COVID kind of hampered their movement,
Yes.
but I'm hoping for the industry's sake that happened. Because remember now, one thing we must remember, and the government must remember, is that we can create these spaces, but if we don't have business to maintain these spaces, they're going to go into ruins. And that is ruin, and that's the problem.
So two things: we need to expand our vision about what it looks like, and we need to represent the ecosystem within our spaces, so that it's multifaceted and
That's
so
correct.
on. We need to look at the economic models, which is what Tyrone is saying. We need to be able to have a coordinating force. The ZAR that Andre Dempster-Chung would have spoken about recently. We have to implement the plans. So it's not about creating the plans, it's about implementing the plans. It's about issues of regulation. It's about taking the shame out of our eye with those things that exist that just need to be financed. The Reggae Music Museum, getting things like Ward Theatre, getting some of those old theatres, the Palace and
getting them back up.
yeah,
Get those spaces back
and they're
up.
empty spaces.
Infrastructure that exists.
Finding places to kind of
Right, and I think one of the things that certainly as an urban planner that is stark to me is that COVID has said to us clearly we need to get back to these spaces, right? These sort of open, accessible public spaces, so that we can continue in terms of the interaction, the socialization, the creativity.
As we finish, as we complete, we have a minute each. What do the districts look like for you? Whether it's an art district or a creative district, 1 minute each. What does that district? What it look like, feel like, smell like, sound like?
I would want to start with downtown, and I'm happy that there's that move afoot already with the creative Kingstn, where you can the connectivity, so you can walk from the western part of Kingston, literally eat your way through, dance your way through, sing your way through, looking at the sights and the sounds and the visual aspect. So that's what I see. It has started. I think we need to sort of propel that.
There needs to be somewhere people can just plug in something and start to play some music.
Yeah, and it needs to be cleaned. Clean. Waste management is a key.
Significant.
One more. We're coming to you now.
I think community involvement, for sure.
Community involvement.
Listen, again, I say, utilize the spaces we have, build on them, put it in infrastructure that any individual, no matter what kind of creative part of the creative industry you are, you can find a space to go and express yourself advertise, show what you can do, and you don't have to be rebuilding every single time that you want to create something. We have to connect the dots. We have to build on what we have to get to a greater space. But most importantly for me, what I'd love to see, and what I'm saying, a creative is to be able to walk into a space where things unfold in a space where not just music and video, but every area of the creative arts can be displayed on a continuous basis. So when you talk about being a creative city, you walk inside and there's always something happening somewhere where people can make money and survive.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Those themes of access and inclusion coming right back around again. So we've looked at the big picture policy. We've looked at issues of infrastructure. We're now moving on to digital. We have the digital gurus in the house. And we're going to be having discussions about these areas. Today, we're talking about policy, thematic examinations of policy as a part of our Connect the Dots series of programming. Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you. Yeah, man. Take care.
Has accelerated in all aspects of creative and indeed everyday life. It is against this backdrop that we now consider what exists in the digital spaces, where our creatives are and where they are interacting with digital audiences. But who are these audiences? Who are these creatives in the spaces? We also truly interrogate the protective digital mechanisms for creatives to capture value. It's a topic very much being considered on different levels, and our panel seeks to shed light on what exists now. We have a very diverse panel, some with years of varying experiences. They have the creativity and the more youthful representation, as well as representation from the diaspora. This session will be facilitated by Stephanie Thomas Gilbert Roberts, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to Stephanie. I'm really looking forward to this discourse. It's going to be amazing. But first, we have to introduce our esteemed panels. First of all, we have Andrea Davis, the CEO, Jamaica Arts Holding founder, International Reggae Day. That's Andrea Davis. Now, I believe Andrea is actually online with us right now. We can see Andrea there.
No, it's not.
Beautiful. Andrea's online?
Online.
She's online.
Yeah,
she's waiting.
online.
She's there, ready to go. We also have Dominic Summers. He's the president of I Create Institute. Dominic is here with us in-house. We have Joan Webley. She is the founder, MD of NOC Enterprises, legal consultant, Watson Webley Advisors. Love that. Joan is also online. There she is. Beautiful. We have Ingrid Riley, founder and CEO, Silicon Caribe. Caribe. Love it. Love it. Hi, Ingrid. She's right here with us. We have Mark Gale, the CEO of My MVP Blueprint. That's our panel. Welcome, guys. And over to you, Stephanie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nisha, for
My
that
pleasure.
warm welcome. And thank you to all my esteemed panelists this morning. It's such a privilege to gather such a diverse range of talent who are at the forefront, really, of many initiatives in our extended CCI ecosystem relating to digital. So, of course, in Jamaica's cultural ecosystem, particularly in our focal area, City Kingston, there are innovative 21st century digital shared spaces, but there are creatives with no access to such spaces. The stakeholders are engaging at many points with all of these rapidly evolving trends. So, we really have to look, first of all, at what exists and look at how people can tap into that and really leverage that for the growth and the overall health of the CCI ecosystem. So, as we delve into the world of digitalization, we find rapidly moving currents that need to be understood, assimilated, and shaped by our own interactions with and because of the changes. Now, COVID-19 has exacerbated, has accelerated, has really invigorated this push in the digital space. And so, I want to start this discussion with, Ingrid Riley here, who has seen this from, its birthing and its baby stage and the evolution.
She's trying to call me old. She's just trying to call, you're trying to call me old, man.
I think, I met you, I won't say the number of years ago, but from then, you were saying all of this is coming and we need to be ready and here it is. So can you give us some context about what exists now and then where do we go from here?
Well, thank you for having me. This is a fantastic initiative. Good to see my fellow high school person, Dr. Deborah Hickling, doing this really kind of cool things. Okay, to answer your question, the fact of the matter is, yes, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I have been part of one of the leaders here in Jamaica and the Caribbean that is helped to facilitate what was already happening and just bringing people together. Jamaicans are a very curious bunch, and especially when it comes to creating and also finding ways to make money, we'll get there. We'll definitely figure it out. And so right now in 2022, we have almost 2 million Jamaicans on Facebook, 180,000 people on TikTok, just a little bit over 1 million on Instagram. And, people are just, and generally, around 60% of Jamaicans are online. So we are already engaging in all things digital. And so the question is, what are we doing there? And so for me, it's about, okay, well, are we creating? Are we finding ways to make money? Are we becoming part of digital tribes? Are we learning? Are we growing? And the answer is yes. Does more need to happen? Without question. So I'm always bullish on Jamaica and the Caribbean and our digital creatives because I'm on the ground, a part of other micro communities that are happening here in Jamaica and the region on WhatsApp and Telegram and all the various digital platforms that exist. There is a Jamaican. Just like how there's that joke that nowhere you go and traveling the world, there is a Jamaican. The same thing applies to digital. So I'm always bullish and excited in terms of what we're doing online. So the question is, we need to do more. So our creatives need to learn more, need to experiment more, need to just simply engage and become part of digital tribes and share what we know and just keep doing what we're doing. I mean, I have more to say, but of course I'll leave.
We will come
I can't leave out the two gentlemen, and of course I definitely want to hear from Joan because Joan is doing some amazing things. Yeah.
So. Thank you so much for setting the context. And you spoke about how easily accessible, this space is right now. As long as you have a cell phone, you're engaging with the digital world in all of these things. TikTok is something that's, regardless of age, there is this access. And so, Mark Gale, I would like to just ask you a little bit, what are some of the latest trends in digital that all creatives should look out for? Generally, everyone should look out for it, but, specifically for creatives.
Well, firstly, thank you for the invitation, Stephanie. Thank you. As Ingrid said, these are wonderful initiatives. In terms of, from a creative standpoint, I think the biggest, the elephant in the room that we can't ignore is obviously what's happening with digital assets, NFTs, that sort of stuff, right? And, one of the things that I think is very, very powerful, my background is I have worked with a bunch of creatives over the years, both on the business side, advising, and, one of the things that we've seen historically is a lot of creatives, particularly artists, they don't always get to capture the full economic value of their creation, right? And so that's kind of like the beautiful thing about NFTs is that it baked into the technology, depending on how each project is done, it allows the creator to effectively always reap a portion of the economic benefits from from once it's published until eternity, right? So and that's significant because, so if you take the traditional art world right now, right, you have, obviously famous, artists, Picasso, Dali, Basquiat, all these guys, they created their artwork, and to a large extent, when they were alive and when they were, at the peak of their creative output, they weren't valued anywhere near what they are today, right? And most of the economic kind of benefits accrue to people that purchased their works and then resold it, right? And so you have all these art collectors all over the world, that buy these paintings and these sculptures and stuff for millions of dollars and then resell them for tens of millions, years later. Whereas so that's what obtains today. With NFTs, it has given artists and creatives the opportunity to also participate in every secondary sale. So you have the initial sale, right? And then once it changes hands after, depending on how the smart contract is written, they have the opportunity to collect a royalty, in perpetuity, effectively, depending on how it's done, right? And so that idea of, the possibility of shifting the tides to make sure that the creatives are capturing a good chunk of the economic value is revolutionary, and it's exciting. And we're at the very, 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 very early stages of it. So over the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be, crazy. I'm happy that I'm alive to be able to witness this, And so, yes, I think that's the biggest thing that's happening now, that's benefiting creatives in a very, very significant way.
Okay, very important considerations. And, that's going to open the box of ethical considerations and efficiency and these things. But we're going to come back to that, and we're going to deep dive into some very specific initiatives around that as well as this session evolves. But before we go to online, I would like to ask Dominic, as we are developing all of these things, and for context, the accessibility, the digital skills, the ability for individuals to use this technology. iCreate is at the forefront of training in this regard. Can you give us some of the trends from that perspective, just so that we see that it is a complex notion? We're speaking here about the future, but in the present, how are people dealing with changes in technology?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think, Ingrid, you introduced it properly, that people have a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of enthusiasm, especially Jamaican people, where they sniff an opportunity, they're running towards it. And I think a lot of what we're seeing at iCreate now, and a lot of what our students and prospective students are communicating to us, is that yes, they are learning a lot, and they're learning about things like NFTs and blockchain and cryptocurrencies and data science and AI, and there's a whole world of terms that don't mean much to the average person. And they are learning, but they're learning in unstructured ways, right? So
Right.
what's happening is that you pick up a little thing here, you see something on TikTok and you go, oh, that's cool.
Right.
And then somebody posts something on Instagram and you kind of go, oh, well, no, but that's what I really want to be on, right? And then you kind of get fragmented, and then for a lot of people you get overwhelmed because then you go, oh, well, I'll never catch up to Ingrid. I'll never have the NFT understanding of Mark. And because you've lacked this structure, because there hasn't been a clear pathway set forward for you, right? And I don't like using this term because the full term is misused, right? When I say jack of all trades, master of none. It is true that it does say often better than the master of one, but a lot of people, they end up way too fragmented, right? So they have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and just as Mark was saying, they're not able to extract the full value from their creative abilities because they don't have the true skill sets to push it to that next level in terms of where we're seeing value creation right across the world right now. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving us a little bit of what's on the ground, and we're of course going to delve a little deeper into some of the specifics of that. But I would like to invite Andrea Davis to really, walk us through in terms of artificial intelligence. You recently created a roadmap of recommendations relating to artificial intelligence for UNESCO on behalf of the Broadcasting Commission. And I would like you to give us an idea. This is a whole new realm with so many possibilities, and it's already, we're interacting with it daily. I mean, even what we're doing now, you online, how Zoom works, it's already here. But there's so much more. So can you give us a little bit of a background to what are some of the considerations of this very specific shift and integration of artificial intelligence?
Well, good morning to all, and thanks for having me, and again, congratulations to the team for doing what is the most critical exercise in connecting the dots. And I am happy to contribute a bit to the esteemed panel of AI technical persons who are on to this morning. Recently completed a AI policy roadmap for UNESCO, co-authored with Erica Simmons, that sought to identify some of the challenges and opportunities, as well as policy direction for the Caribbean to begin to prepare more earnestly for what is already taking place, which is the digital transformation. As we know, AI is that most powerful general use technology coming in the fourth revolution, and one that is predicted to impact every single sector in everybody's economy. It is both a vertical and horizontal industry. And so from that stance, we're seeing already, we are living with AI in our midst, from Siri and Alexa to self-driving cars to online recommendations from Amazon and Netflix every time you jump on, to your social media platforms that seem to know before you what you should be looking at, to things like traffic hotspots and rerouting of our grids. So AI is already very much a part of our lives, but it is going to amplify that impact in the next few years. And it is it's unfortunate that at this time we, although as creatives and as business people, we are making our efforts to move along with the transformation, the infrastructure that is needed to clearly move this forward is lagging in the Caribbean. So the time is really now for action, for not only policy infrastructure, but also physical digital infrastructure that's going to be necessary for us to harness, manage, and work the data that we are, both our physical, environmental, as well as social and historical data that the Caribbean represents as a possible source of monetization, as well as improvement in the lives of the people of the region. So we are very well positioned, I think, as creatives in the Caribbean to take part in this new digital economy, to be a part of the engine of change that it must have in order to be fully realized. Everything from creating the tools to educate the public to creating the algorithms and software that will become the new standards internationally. I think those are areas in which the Caribbean creative has a lot of room to grow. And obviously it's going to take investment. I think the sooner we move to that stage where we can make broadband and Wi-Fi human rights and accessible to all, we will see growth in this area in leaps and bounds. So in the policy roadmap, we were looking at 6 principal areas that need to be focused on, and they are resiliency, governance, transformation, upskilling, preservation, and sustainability. And to the extent that we're able to innovate our business models, prioritize data, and prepare our workforce by upskilling them, because obviously with automation, there's going to be job loss. And the way to mitigate that is to create new jobs. And in this digital time, there are going to be an amazing amount of new jobs coming on the stream, everything from the preservation and archiving of the creation of data. And in all of that, I think creatives have an opportunity to pivot, as it were, into this new hybrid reality that we all have become accustomed to during the pandemic, and that Ingrid has been preaching about for many, many years. And that we can begin to see more of our efforts being translated through the technology. So whether we're talking about the secondary market of NFTs for artists, or we're speaking about e-tourism or esports, augmented reality, and the rest, there are a number of ways in which this technology can begin to help us to repackage, reposition, and re-engage the market. But in all of it, it also comes with its dangers. So it's going to be very important for us to also be able to advocate for ethics, for unbiased software, and to be active in the conversations with developers around the world. Because for the most part, a lot of this technology is being developed by white men in the first world. And we in the region and in the southern hemisphere, we need to do more to begin to develop our own algorithms and software that will seek to be non-biased, transparent, and accountable.
That's very important. That's very important, and Andrea, and a perfect segue into the consideration of inclusivity. And Joan Webley, who has joined us this morning, has been working on actually infrastructure considerations relating to this principle of inclusivity. And Joan, if you can just give us an idea of some of what you are working on and delving into. I mean, it's fascinating what you are working on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Steph. Thank you to everyone who has organized the support to this and my fellow presenters. Before I go into what we are working on, and it's a team of us, I want to stress that it's the why of it for me. And hearing Dr. Archer earlier speaking about the tons of plans that we have challenges with implementing, hearing Mark speak about the royalties and the way in which artists are able to simply benefit in this space are some of the immediate whys. But in general, for anyone who knows me or who is themselves involved in community or creative organization, be it stakeholder groups such as JARIA, events such as Jamaica Music Conference, creative hubs and groups. In all of these different situations, I think we face similar challenges with implementation. And that is why I have become somewhat of a town crier. It was very humbling, but happy moment to hear Ingrid say that she was excited about what we're doing now, because I definitely don't view myself as an innovator in this space. I view myself like many persons in this room who probably for a very long time ignored anything named blockchain. I'm very much not a techie for all of the many hats that I've worn in the past. But what I stumbled upon out of need, because I recently relocated from Jamaica being my primary residence, I'm now bi-coastal or bi-continental, there was a need for me to stay connected. And that need allowed me to realize and recognize the solution that is there for all of us in this new space. That's why this issue of inclusion is so important, because the cryptoverse and the metaverse, yes, it's art, and yes, it's games, and yes, it's avatars, and these things that all sound like foreign language or irrelevant. But at the core, what it delivers in a really simple way is democracy, accountability, and transparency. And at its core, those are the issues that trip us up over and over at various stages and phases of our implementation of our wonderful and well-informed plans. So that is the why of what's been happening, and what has been happening in a very simple and very easy way is that we've been developing a way that we can educate, or in this space, they call it onboard, as many persons as possible within not just Jamaica, but the Caribbean, into this cryptoverse, into this digital or virtual space where we're seeing so many solutions possible. Solutions for artists, solutions for musicians, I'm working on solutions right now for persons in film, for coffee industry. There are just so many ways in which persons can raise funds and have other opportunities to exponentially expand their network, eliminate middlemen and shorten times for doing businesses, and expand not just your network, but your market. It's really borderless in those ways. So what we're developing is called the Carry Drop DAO. It's a team of us. We were successful in second place at the Kingston Creative Hack. And it's a team of artists, myself, software engineers. There's a group of us that are designing what this core concept will be, testing it out in different ways. I myself have been doing what we'll call cryptoverse tours. So for anyone who is interested in trying to ground their feet in this space, we're offering different tours to trial and see what the different access points are and really figure out how we can best streamline the access and influx of our people and people who can really benefit from this space into this space. We don't want the opportunity to miss them. And the hurdles are there. There's digital literacy, there's financial literacy, there's internet connectivity. You know, we all are aware of them, but what I am here today for and doing in general is just trying to inspire persons to pay attention and to get involved themselves. So it's a DAO, which means decentralized autonomous organization. I will leave it there for now because that's a whole other conversation, but essentially it's an open platform for anyone who wants to get involved. They'll be able to do so and help to onboard others and design ways that we can collectively benefit in the future.
Thank you for so clearly explaining your why, Joan, and I think that brings a lot of us to the table. Absolutely. Right? And it's an out of necessity that we must innovate and we must figure out what's out there and how to leverage it. And I want to take it back to Ingrid, since we're on this topic of inclusivity. You do a lot of initiatives with women in digital and kind of, you know, what is this dynamic on the ground? How are women, you know, accessing digital spaces differently from their male counterparts? Like, what exactly is happening on the ground here?
Yeah, it varies because, well, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, Silicon Carib, we've been around for 15 years now, and I mean, I had to basically feel shame, as we would say, right? That only last year we created the first top 50 Caribbean women in tech list, so people can know and see what certain women are doing in this space from way back on until now. But the reason why there are not more women in the space, I mean, yeah, they're right now I think there are a little bit over 50% of girls that are in gaming, and we have stats like that. But generally, we need a lot more girls and women in the tech space. And I think one of the main things that we've identified is that technology and careers in technology, possibilities in technology, it has been, you know, marketed to us very badly. When people think of tech, they think you need to learn how to code, you need to be sitting in a room with a whole bunch of wires and that kind of thing. What we need to be better at, and we're finding ways to educate and inform across a range of platforms and a range of initiatives with partners, is to show women, and not just women, everybody, that there are a range of possibilities in the digital space in terms of if you want to craft your career, if you want to start a business, if you want to invest. There's just a range of possibilities. We have to get better at showcasing the range. Just glad that there are places like iCreate and there are other initiatives and just communities. But what has been really good, and I really kind of want to spotlight this, is that whole each one teach one within these micro communities. Yes. That's something that's been going on since I was doing Kingston beta and Caribbean beta and a whole bunch of other events, and it continues now just on platforms like Telegram and others. And I just kind of want to encourage people, if you know people who are part of these micro communities, these digital tribes, get in there and listen, connect, and learn. But yeah, we're just going to have to get better at showcasing the range of possibilities in the digital space, and we can do that through events, we can do that through education, we can do that through consulting, through government. Everybody can have a role in that. So we have to do a lot more coming forward.
Right, and that directly links me to Dominic again, because on the ground, what's the composition? You know, what are the demographics coming through iCreate now for training?
So as we all know, Jamaica is a special place in this regard in terms of women seeking tertiary education. It's statistically, it's closer to a 2-to-1 right across the board. And we've seen that as well. I mean, going back to last summer when I was personally teaching coding and cybersecurity 101s is what we call them, a good introduction. There were 2-day courses, 4 hours each go. And there were majority women. Every time, every cohort after cohort,
really,
with almost no wavering of the trend line, right? And then another interesting thing that we've seen, and I always come back to this point, especially when we talk about diversity, is that we see an increased interest in persons who would describe themselves as differently abled, right? Who don't have the conventional ability to jump on a bus and come into town and do something. And not just in terms of physical ability, right, but also in terms of safety. I mean, COVID also exacerbated this because you had persons living with pre-existing conditions that really were looking forward to having new ways of working that didn't put them at risk. So it put a lot more into perspective, not just from an opportunity perspective, but just in terms of how much need there is for different ways of figuring out careers and figuring out career paths and how people are going to make their lives, you know. So. And it holds up true for both persons who are seeking careers as well as for entrepreneurs, right? We get a lot of women who, they have a business, they've identified a gap, right? They don't necessarily have the capital to go and pay somebody, right? They may have the money to go say, Mark, come in and give me a consultation on how I grow this thing, but they realize where they have the capacity to gain a new skill set and have the growth mindset to step forward in that direction. So it's extremely encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got an amen here in the chorus. So this is really good insight. And I like how you connected the dots so seamlessly to Mark in terms of value creation. And so, Mark, I want to understand, what are some of the considerations entrepreneurs coming into the digital space need to consider when they're valuing their creative products?
You know, that's a great question, Stefan. I mean, it's a very, very kind of like tricky thing because, I mean, it's a multifaceted question, very, very deep, multiple layers, right? You know, from as basic as kind of, so I'm thinking about Jamaica in particular, because that is kind of where, you know, my headspace has been at for the last, 10, 15 years. I think one of the biggest things that creative entrepreneurs or artists or whatever need to kind of like internalize is, yes, your creations have value, but then you also need to, value the input from other people, right? Yes. So, most great projects are never done by one person, even though, in the NFT space does allow that. But, that is kind of like the minority. The average project that really will move the needle tends to be built by, teams of people. And the teams have different perspectives. They have different, interests, different wants, different needs. They respond to different incentives. And so I think it's important for creatives in general to understand, okay, listen, I need to inform myself outside of my art and outside of, kind of like what I love, inform myself on things that may seem scary, accounts, finance, right? Like, I'm not saying you need to become a chartered accountant or, an investment banker, but I am saying that you need to be able to understand the way business people think, the way accountants think, the way financial professionals think. That way you can know when to give and when to take. Because one of the biggest things that I have personally seen, and I've worked with, a number of creative entrepreneurs and artists generally, is there's always this tension between, you know, the artist and the creative feeling justifiably so that they have been exploited in the past by business people, the dirty MBAs that come and just steal their idea and blah blah blah, right? So there has been a significant amount of exploitation by the business class for creative. So I'm not gonna excuse that at all. That being said, the reaction or the appropriate reaction shouldn't be a complete reversion to staying away from business people, not engaging at all, and not sharing, willing to give up a limited amount of control, right? And so the famous, the old adage is true. It's better to have 10% of 1,000 than 100% of 10, right? Like so that's something that I think a lot of creatives struggle with. And one of the things that is not properly spoken about is how many projects die in the graveyard, are currently in the graveyard because the creatives could not give up some control. Right? And I'm not saying give up all control. I'm not saying let somebody run roughshod and thief your idea and take credit. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that you have to find the balance, and you have to be okay with understanding and accepting the fact that you will not be able to make all of the decisions, particularly on the business side.
That's very
but
important.
you will work with them and collaborate and so on, right?
Yeah, and that's really good insight. So when we are looking at mapping the digital ecosystem, we really need to look at pods. We really need to look at groupings, at skill sets, because although you have individuals, as you say, for something to really move forward, it tends to be a community that helps this kind of digital space move forward. And I see, Ingrid, that you want to respond to this?
Yeah, always. Communities, that's something that's always driven change, and always driven learning, and always driven even the creation of wealth.
Right.
It's a matter of now finding the tribe that reflects what it is that you want to do or want to become.
Absolutely.
So that's why I keep mentioning digital tribes or going to events and getting involved with certain associations that map to what it is that you're doing now or what it is that you want to do. Right. So yeah, communities is basically where the power has always lied.
And I want to turn it over now to Andrea online. In terms of what about the artist that creates art for art's sake? What do you say to such an artist to really Mark is saying that you need to have this entire ecosystem almost around you, or grouping around you to move you forward. But you have some artists that just want to be a part of the social fabric of the world, and how do you communicate the need to have financial literacy and this type of stuff in that to such an artist whose value is very important?
I think you have to lean on the examples of success. So we as a people tend to pattern ourselves after success. So I think the more we can tell the stories of those who have balanced the creative drive with the need to financially sustain and share some of their best practices, we can begin to open up the mindset, because it really is a mindset, as the previous speaker spoke to, where we think because we're creative, we don't deal well with money, or we don't want to deal with money. But there are, I think, also enablers in every ecosystem that can bridge the gap between the two parties and can begin to translate into languages that we all can speak at the same time. The opportunities and the challenges, as well as the strategies for how we move from where we are to where we need to be. I'm getting some very strange messages on this feed right now. I don't know if anyone else is seeing these. Are you hearing me, Stephanie?
The technical crew are going to try to clean up.
Yeah, man, kick that person out.
And kick that and take that person out of the room kindly. The name is just iPad. Yeah. So if we can, wow.
I thought it was something.
So this is again, this is in the digital space. We have we have this type of risk that comes in, and we have to completely monitor it.
Cybersecurity is going to be one of those emerging industries within the industry. Yeah?
Yes.
And there's going to be need for more software developers and more algorithms just to be able to protect us from not only these kind of momentary incursions, but from random data or sharing.
Absolutely, and I think it's a perfect time to deal with this security issues in the digital space because it's so rapidly evolving. There's so many gaps there, and so what are some of the very practical ways that you find we can protect ourselves in the digital space? So maybe Joan, you want to, and then we go to Ingrid.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I cannot speak as technically accurately as the panels there can, I'm sure, but in terms of practical solutions, one of the first things that I really recommend to anyone before getting super involved is to get informed. So again, I'm not certain who on the panel mentioned it, but in terms of finding friends or persons who you know who may already be active, who can hold your hand into the space, who can give you some kind of a basis and plant your feet firmly. I also encourage a lot of persons to check out Twitter spaces, check out Clubhouse rooms. These are free virtual spaces where there's a lot of information available to you. There are people giving personal accounts as well as practical tips on how you can move forward. So the great thing about the space is that, yes, there are dangers there as with every space, but this is a space that I've also found to be very, very helpful, the persons in the space. So and whoever you reach out to is very likely to take the time and make the time to get you up to speed and get you moving and operating in a way that will keep you safe in the space. There are other practical tips such as utilizing multiple digital wallets, for example, when you're in different spaces, having one wallet specifically for testing out new sites so you don't put yourself at too much risk. But those are just a few of the practical solutions that I would share.
Protections and lack of protections in that. So I want to come back to that, but Ingrid?
No, I just follow what Jonah has said in terms of, yes, ask someone. Yes. Just ask for help. That's why, again, community is important. So you can ask somebody, go to an event, you raise your hand and you ask questions. Yes. But there's this beautiful thing called Google. It's really that simple. How do I protect myself online? Yes. Hit enter. Sometimes it's really that simple to say, because there's a crap ton of information online, and just simply go reading. So if you're afraid initially, or maybe not in a place where you can ask questions, you're not in a class, you don't have a friend, who knows, go to Google.
Yeah, but we're historically a lot of the time, if it's in print, if it's, we have to read it through the fine print.
No, man, we can watch it and we can listen to it as well. YouTube and podcast about. Yeah, man, it's called being resourceful.
Yeah, but with artificial intelligence that can feed you what you want to feed, there is information. But when you're in the space, you sometimes go down a rabbit hole, and then you don't even, it's not even consciously
trusted sources, and those trusted sources vary, but there are a lot of trusted brands, media brands, educational brands, government brands that have crafted guides, and that's something that's interesting, and I hope iCreate is something that you're going to get involved in as you talk about where to get help about securing yourself online, or just knowing what careers to get into or what businesses to start. I really hope that there's a need, even more so than 15 years ago when we created the first internet guide. People need to be guided as to where to go, and to have maybe that either initial internet experience, that initial, or what are the top 50 places, top 50 podcasts, or the top 50 Caribbean media brands. Those sort of a mini guides that allow people to have a secure, trusted, initial, pleasant experience going online and that kind of thing. So guides, really, really crucial, even more so now.
And I think it brings us to something that, we've been working on heavily for the last year at iCreate when we talk to companies, regardless of the industry, a lot of the conversation is around establishing a baseline level of understanding of digital, right? So yes, we might not necessarily have to go deep into a particular area, right? But we're coming from a space, when I was a kid growing up, I always remember saying, don't put out any personal information online, right? We have gone so far from that now, that now we have a whole nother set of considerations. And as we're talking about blockchain and we're talking about irrevocable sources of trust and unchangeable ledgers and things like that, it's even going to become more permanent what you put out there. So establishing this baseline level of understanding, and some industries do very well at it, right? When you look at financial services, insurance, they don't have the flexibilities to mess up, right? A mistake, put it as something as simple as putting a USB in a wrong computer at work has crippled companies. And many companies that face a cybersecurity attack don't recover, right? It's an overwhelming majority. So you've had examples of industries that don't traditionally have this broad level of IT training who are getting there now. And it's about replicating some of what we've seen be successful, right? And letting everybody know. If you work in a bank right now, whether you're from the security at the door or you're cleaning the place, you have to have a baseline level of understanding because it could be as simple as letting somebody on the Wi-Fi for 5 minutes. And you could look at serious risks just from that. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and
a lot of educational work.
So I see Mark.
Yeah, if I can just jump in, Stephanie. So I agree with everything both Dominic and Ingrid said, and John and Andrea. So part of me is I'm struggling with this because the truth is that criminals that obviously perpetuate these cyber criminal acts are infinitely inventive. They'll always find a way to get around, the controls that you set up. I'm thinking about, for example, we all get these spam emails, that, say you want, $100 million and whatever, you need to send me some money. It's the typical, scamming, lots of scamming, but via email. I read something very interesting about a year or two ago that kind of indicates how difficult this problem is. I'm sure that when you see these emails, they're riddled with typos and whatever. Like to those of us, probably everybody here, we see it and we say, okay, this is obviously a scam, right? And so we just mark it as spam and move on. What the researcher was saying is that apparently these emails are crafted exactly like that, specifically because what they want to do is to increase the conversion rate. Because when they put typos and use bad grammar, they screen out the more sophisticated people that are receiving it. So they don't have to waste time following up and trying to dupe, unwitting, counterparts. And so that tells you that, these guys, they're thinking through the second order and the third order effects. Like, in other words, they're running a business, right? What they want to do is send, 1 trillion emails and just speak to and convert the most likely targets, right? And so, kind of coming back to like this initiative, I think, what's interesting or what's needed is that we need to accept that there are many people in our population that, will always be gullible to some of these things, right? For either, lack of education or just, their current circumstances are so dire that they're looking for hope. And so when they see an email, regardless of the bad grammar, regardless of the typos, and even though they know that if it's too good to be true, it probably is, just that little bit of hope keeps them, intrigues them and then takes them down a rabbit hole that makes things a lot worse, right? And so the job of all of us here is really just to, spread the message that just default to skepticism. And I know that's a negative kind of message to send, but you have to, when you're dealing online, look at it, we just had it a while ago, right? Exactly. People will always look for loopholes. They will always look for, things to exploit. And it's, incumbent upon us to help those that are more vulnerable where that's concerned. And then another thing, sorry, Ingrid, I know you want to jump, but another thing I want to say, I think Andrea mentioned about AI earlier and inclusivity. What is happening now, or what needs to happen, is, we need a lot more representation for people of color or minorities, generally speaking, right? Because one of the things about AI is that AI is not all-knowing before it's all-knowing. It needs to be trained. So the question is, who is training the AI, right? So the way AI works is it's literally just machines, and you feed them a data set, right? And then the data set, and then it learns from the data set. Well, I mean, it's no surprise that in the early days, a lot of these, like Facebook, for example, had this famous thing where, they were tagging or mistagging black people, for example, in its early days of this photo thing. And the reason is because the data set that it was fed was primarily of white people, right?
Because it was white people who was doing the feeding of the data sets.
Exactly. And
there are no women, there are no gay people, there are no black people, there are no Jewish people.
And to be clear, I don't think they were intentionally doing it, I'm just saying that their perspective was, okay, this is what people look like. I'm just going to feed, the algorithm, the data set of people I'm familiar with. So, anyway, I just thought I'd throw it in.
So really important on that, because even at the highest levels, Google, Facebook, in the last 2 years, I've seen so many resignations of persons of color from these programs, because they're saying that it's so skewed and there's nothing they can do about it. And they themselves, even at the highest levels, are finding discrimination when they point things out. So, I mean, this is a really structurally tough, because you don't have access at that level, and if they're pointing out that it's so serious at that level that they want to make such a big issue that they're the one black person in the room and they're going to remove themselves because their voice is still not being heard, where do we go as, Caribbean stakeholders?
Stephanie, that's why you need black founders, you need black investors, you need black board members, you need black advisors, and not just
black and women investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's worse than being prevented from these spaces is us preventing ourselves from the discussion, or us limiting our own. Absolutely, right?
Amen.
Now, it's wide open, and so really, some people, when I speak to them about this, the first thing out of their mouth is, "No, man, that sounds like Ponzi scheme," and they've just completely tuned out and don't want to hear. And that's why I spent so much time today on my why. It was the one thing I wanted to share. To make persons, to really impress upon everyone in this room the relevance of it to their own lives right now, and the fact that this decentralized space, I really view decentralization as a real path to decolonization. And if it's really utilized by us, and if we get in there and start shaping it in a way that we couldn't shape our own systems, a lot of what we have, we inherited. Jamaica wasn't even a country when we joined a lot of the international treaties and laws we're a part of. But this metaverse and this virtual space is being shaped now. So it's really imperative on persons who want to have a voice to just get involved. It's really, really quite simple as stepping up or YouTubing.
Together in terms of, closing thoughts. I want to do a round of any final considerations on the impact of the convergence of digital finance innovation with all of these kind of ethical considerations. What do you want to leave with the audience, or to add to what exists and where we are going from a Jamaican perspective, Caribbean perspective, woman, man, diaspora? So perhaps we start in the reverse. Let's start in the reverse. So Joan, you're muted.
Thank you. I really would like to share the real strong belief I have that decentralization, or this digital space, this virtual realm that we're entering, can really be a path to decolonization in its truest sense, and really to encourage everyone in the room to take that first step to get involved, to not view this as something that's an irrelevant, abstract happening, and rather as something that is very real and can provide real solutions to their everyday life through the access and the ability to shape the way forward in a way that it's really unparalleled, and we haven't been a part of that conversation in this way before.
And Andrea?
All right, well, I wanted to say that opportunities for Caribbean CCI is limitless in this digital economy, creative economy. And if we act now to develop the digital infrastructure, legislation, new skills, and content, we'll be in a much better place post-COVID, post-colonial position than I think we've been in the Caribbean. I wanted to just touch on a couple of key points in closing about what Caribbean SIDS should be doing in terms of a region-wide strategy to create and expand AI in the space. including an aligning AI strategy with regional development plans for education, food security, climate change, digital transformation, as well as economic growth. Expand the regional digital skills and AI capability, integrating more women, more other able than youth into the process. Build strong digital infrastructure, including 5G, high performance computing CPUs, cybersecurity to support AI deployment, content development, and guaranteed access to the internet. Establish the AI appropriate governance for security, risk mitigation, regional strategy implementation. And finally, to invest in education and R&D in science, technology, and engineering, led by public sector digital transformation and the provision of incentives for businesses to also make this transformation. We can unite and rebuild our region stronger, more resilient post-COVID than we were before. And it's critical that we use these technologies coming forth as a tool to the enhancement and improvement and well-being of our lives. And at the same time, regulate it so it does not become or live up to its potential as an existential threat.
Very important. And so I think it's Dominic, since we're going in the reverse at the beginning.
Yeah, okay, sure. You know, I kind of come at this from two perspectives. I think the first one is to every individual, whether you tell yourself you can or you tell yourself you can't, you're right. So you might as well tell yourself that you can learn these things. I mean, a lot of what we've been discussing here may not be familiar to everybody in the Zoom or in the room, but it is something that you can wrap your head around. And then on the other side of things, for every organization, every business, whether small, large, government, digital transformation and transformation doesn't mean that you're going to go straight from here to now having AI-empowered 5G running, NFT, blockchain, all of this type of space. I mean, it could literally be taking something out of a book and putting it in a Google sheet, right? So, I mean, you have to start where you are and you have to move incrementally, and it begins with a single step. And I think a lot of people have a lot of fear around a lot of what we've been speaking about, right? Because of the lack of understanding. But you have to start where you are, take baby steps. You can get there. The support is there, the groups, the telegrams, the discords, the Twitter spaces, the clubhouses, but take that first step.
And Mark?
Yeah, so I think my last thoughts I would leave is, kind of like geared towards creatives is, really adopt this equity mindset, meaning, it's better to have a smaller piece of a much larger pie. So focus on growing the pie as opposed to growing your portion of the pie, right? Because it is a lot more value can be created for, not just for you, but for, the world. You think about the fact that, okay, Jeff Bezos is one of the richest men in the world, and he only owns 12% of Amazon, right? Or 11% or whatever it is. And, he has this famous saying, okay, yes, he may be worth, $150, $200 billion, but, he has created $1.8 trillion or $2 trillion worth of wealth for everybody else. That's pensioners, that's employees, that is investors all over the world, right? And so, so the main thing I would say is, kind of like focus on the big picture, focus on growing the pie as opposed to trying to hoard as much of the current portion of the pie as you can.
Excellent. Yes, let us diversify, include, and expand. So, last words.
For me, it's I always come at this from a position of ownership in terms of entrepreneurship and investing. Without question, we have no choice but to learn this thing called digital. We are living in a digital society. We are growing a global and Caribbean and Jamaican digital economy. The fact of the matter is that there's a ton of opportunity. You've heard it here for the last 45 minutes that we've all been talking. And I'll just leave with this. We need more black people, we need more women, we need more queer people, we need more Jamaican people, we need more Caribbean people. We just need black people in the digital space to create, to start businesses, and to invest. Punto final.
Okay, on that final note, we would like to thank you, our esteemed panel. It has been a most intriguing moment in time spent with you, and I believe that the message will translate, and I do hope that we are able to capture this in the mapping that we're doing, and that it will live on and inform wider communities. Certainly, you know, we thank those who are online and engaging with us in this in a very real way in this moment. And we look forward to see where this evolves and the continued advocacy from each of you, which extends way beyond our borders. Yeah. So thank you so much for a great session.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, guys. I am riveted. Like, I've learned so much just sitting here in the short time that you guys have been speaking. I have learned so much. Speaking of the industry, the tech industry, we have some questions that were posed online. The first question, however, was for you, Stephanie. We have Monica Winsome that's saying, love it. How can I get on board?
Okay.
How can she get involved?
Well, this is actually a mapping exercise in which we're looking at what exists. So if you have initiatives that exist, we would like you to first of all, you can send it to Networks of Culture. Is email address. It's in all our social media. But I see Joan raising her hand online in terms of for a response.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say, please, to anyone interested, they could just visit at Carry Drop on Instagram. It's a simple way, Carry, C-A-R-I, Drop. And it's a space where we are really wanting to connect with persons who are interested in finding out more about the space. You know, we'll be creating information and trying to onboard persons and support persons to become onboarders, the same each one teach one concepts we've all been sharing today.
I want to stay with Joan for a second because, Joan, we have a question for you. The lady is asking, she is a writer. She's saying, thanks, Joan. What are the solutions that you have for writers, and would she be able, or would they be able to take a tour?
Okay, absolutely. Anyone is able to take a tour. Again, either at Carry Drop or at Joan of Nanook. You would be able to book the tour there. You just go there in the link tree and pick a time that works for you. So anyone is able to take the tour. And in terms of writers, and really anyone who's an intellectual property owner, I think the most succinct and helpful way I could answer this right now is to refer to another resource that's there on the Carry Drop website. There's a white paper there that was written just for this purpose. It actually has 1 or 2 pages where it addresses intellectual property considerations, because even though this is the metaverse or a virtual world, your intellectual property rights as a writer, as an artist, as a musician, whatever role you play as a creator is still relevant in how you use it in this space. So it's not a short answer, but I would be happy to speak with you further if you contact us at any of those means I've mentioned, and I hope that clarifies.
Awesome. All right, now we have, this question is a large one, and I'm not sure how to unpack it, but I'm going to throw it out to you guys and let you guys deal with it. So earlier, Ingrid, you mentioned about Google. Just Google it. Like, if you have any questions, thoughts, or you're not sure about something, get involved with the community, but also Google the information. So somebody commented and was saying, how do they know that what they're reading is accurate? Like, it's such a, you know what I'm saying, it's such a scary place sometimes. You Google something, you go online, and there's like 1,000,001 information coming at you, and a lot of it is incorrect. You know what I mean? How do you scope through, how do you go through and find out what is accurate? I'm going to throw it to all of y'all, and we have about 4 or 5 minutes until we conclude this session.
Well, you could start with initially with your known trusted sources. Do they pop up in your search results? So you can go there first. Then I would say it's also a matter of trial and error. There's no question. Oh, look there. Okay. Yeah. Hi. Look there. Okay. All right. Gotcha. So go to your trusted sources. Hopefully they come up somewhere in the results. But additionally, you see, I lost my train of thought screen right now.
Right?
Gone
Online,
out of my head.
But
anyway, but also it's a matter of trial and error. Without question, you're going to, you're going to have to do some sifting and sorting as well. And so that's why I said it has to be a mixture of, yes, Googling, looking for trusted and known sources, and also asking, doing a little bit of backup with maybe some friends, asking, is this real for real? That kind of a thing. That's my initial
And can
response.
just to add to that, another kind of like interesting trend that has happened in the last couple of years is, on Twitter in particular, there have been these communities, kind of like self-organized communities that have popped up. So like one community that I'm involved in is a community called Finance Twitter JA, which is the hashtag Finance Twitter JA, where all we do is just, it's a random collection of Jamaicans typically that share information about finance and break down, all of the kind of like scary topics or the complex topics of finance, and interpret, the news, economic events, and so on, right? And so, over time, that community has grown. So my what I'm saying is that what you see on Twitter in particular is that there are all these little kind of like niche communities where people are just sharing information for free. There's no cost. You just go in, you learn, you read what people are saying, and then the beautiful thing about it is that if people are wrong, Twitter will call them out on it. So you'll be able to see what are the dissenting voices and opinions and so on, and you can form your own opinion. So it's just digging in and doing research on your own.
Yeah, and ultimately it's a case of cross-referencing. So you read something one place, or you read something on Twitter, you don't have to take it as a gospel right away, right? Put that into Google. Can you see 1, 2, 3, 10 sources that affirm that information? So yes, have some patience and check a few sources.
Excellent.
Yes. Guys, thank you so much. That's
Thank
a wrap
you.
on this one.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Like I said earlier, I learned so much. Bless you guys. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Panelists. Yes.
Thank you, Joan.
I don't know about you, but I am full already with all that wonderful information that was given this morning. However, we're not done yet. We have our afternoon session that starts at 2 p.m. So stick and stay, because there's more coming up. The two final discussions that we have: status of the artist, which I think very, very important, and also the way forward. Guys, you don't want to miss this. All right, so we're signing off for now, but we'll be back at 2 p.m. Now, don't forget, get in touch with us. Our Twitter account at NOC_culture. Talk to us. What's your thoughts? What are your questions? Let us know. For Facebook and Instagram, the 2 million of you that's on Facebook in Jamaica, talk to us at Networks of Culture, and on Instagram at Networks of Culture. Hashtag KNOC, hashtag connect the dots, hashtag Networks of Culture. So stick and stay, grab your lunch. We'll be back at 2 p.m. See you soon.
Recording stopped.